You and I are about to watch a nameless mercenary captain who was born way too low to ever reach the top. Zero talent, zero status. No future no matter how hard he fought. But then he dies and wakes up as the Grand Duke's third son. This time around, he finally gets everything he never had. Noble blood, absolutely insane talent, and basically endless resources. Packed with all that brutal mercenary experience, he starts climbing his way right back to the absolute peak of the world. Because what actually happens when a guy who had literally nothing suddenly gets everything? A mercenary who refuses to die is cheap. The only reason they get paid the big bucks is because they are willing to die for their master. Our main character has to listen to this absolute nonsense every single day. But hey, it can't be helped. That is just mercenary life. Glancing out over the battlefield, he mutters that these aristocrats are all sickeningly predictable. When they need you, they promise land and titles. But then, they immediately go back on their word and make up trash excuses. Turning to his employer, he says that his latest demand is even crazier than usual. He must have misheard him right, obviously. But the commander-in-chief says he heard perfectly. He literally just told him to die. Jake smirks. Did his memory really fail him? Did this noble forget who he was talking to? The commander coldly replies that he has not. He is Jake, the mercenary captain. Jake just laughs, pointing out that, well, at least the guy knows exactly who he is threatening. The commander says he didn't realize mercenaries made jokes. Jake reaches for his dagger. Yeah, it is pretty clear this is not an order. Otherwise, why ask a lowly, pathetic mercenary to die with honor on the battlefield, like he is some kind of glorious noble knight? The noble admits maybe he was a bit too blunt and apologizes for misleading him. He really just wants to give him one final mission. He knows better than anyone that after all these recent defeats, their total collapse is practically inevitable. Now, pay attention. The traitors have completely turned their blades against these land's defenders. They are literally at the Crawford family's throat right now, and there is absolutely nowhere left to run. Our guy sighs. Seeing how completely messed up things are, he understands the situation perfectly. It definitely looks like it is time to bolt. A commander with unmatched talent in the entire empire is giving up. If he is, this desperate things must be genuinely horrific. Still, for a snooty aristocrat, he was surprisingly reasonable. What a huge shame it ended like this. Anyway, time for his final mission in this absolute chaos. Did he just need him to scout an escape route? If that is all, he will easily take it as one last job before getting paid. But the commander-in-chief says the mission is incredibly simple. Tomorrow, those traitors will launch a massive full-scale attack. Just stand by his side and hold them back until their precious lord finds a safe hiding spot. And if that fails, just hold the line until he literally dies. He will throw him the rest of the cash afterward. A mana stone that huge could easily fund a mercenary army for 3 whole years. Furious Jake smacks the stone out of his hands, demanding what this means. He snaps that he should be asking that. Does this noble think he is an idiot just because he smiles a lot? He is obviously just using them as a literal human shield. Even if they help, they wouldn't last long anyway. He is just wasting their lives to buy his master time to escape. And if they miraculously survive, what then? Does he honestly think those idiots will just let them walk away? The commander points out they are mercenaries, not loyal knights. The enemy knows this. Once he dies, the enemy army will just scatter. Jake flashes a dark smile. Exactly right. That is how their dirty business works. We both know he gets it right. To those monsters, Jake's squad is a sworn enemy they will happily slaughter without hesitation. All because of his brutal, underhanded methods. Flashback time. When the enemy squad found their dead comrades and spotted one sole survivor, the commander ordered a knight to go check his pulse. The second he got close, boom. Jake, faking his injuries, instantly drove a hidden blade straight through the guy's neck. The knights instantly realized it was an ambush. These weren't allies, they were the deadly Fang Squad mercenaries. Right on cue, every single mercenary who had been playing dead suddenly leaped up and attacked them. The furious commander yells about them, stealing armor from fallen soldiers, crying about honor. Jake just immediately beheads him. Honor, what honor? He reminds his boss that he has already chopped off several enemy commanders' heads like this. He really needs to understand playing dirty was the only way his squad survived this long. Those guys want to tear his squad to pieces way more than catching the lord. Seeing the commander's blank face, he asks if he seriously expected them to take all the aggro. The commander just glares firmly, telling him to focus on finishing the damn task, or else he will kill him and take command. As he reaches for his sword, trust me, we need to see what happens next. Alright, stick with me. Here you are about to watch a guy who thought he was dealing with standard aristocrats, only to realize he is facing the absolute worst of them all. The commander sincerely apologized to him for everything, but our guy just scoffed. Honestly, what exactly is the point of an apology right now? This is actually way better. Honestly, he could toss this idiot's head to the stray dogs waiting below, and his conscience would not feel a single drop of guilt. He asked if the guy planned to buy off the traitors with his head, just to beg for his miserable life. The MC confirmed it. As much as he would love to simply hand him over and walk away, he is pretty certain he already stopped them from doing that. In that case, as their commander, he is absolutely obligated to fulfill his bloody duty to the very end. The rebels will gladly take 2 commanders' heads, and in exchange, they will actually spare his people. The chief looked shocked. Wait, 2 commanders? Was he seriously going to sacrifice his own head just to save his loyal subordinates? The MC explained that he promised these people who followed him that even starting from absolute rock bottom, it is completely possible to achieve your wildest dreams. They fully trusted him and followed him right to the bitter end. So as their commander, he needs to take full responsibility for this mess. The commander now looked at him in a completely different light. He started laughing hysterically, calling this the ultimate sign of a true leader. Such a pity if he served him instead of Crawford, things could have turned out so differently. Right after saying that, the MC lunged forward with a completely furious grin. He shut his eyes, reflecting on everything, then swung his sword heavily, telling the guy not to ever forgive him. Now watch closely. He expected to lose, but you and I did not expect the power gap to be this massive as his own head flies. Maybe this really is the end. He told them to run without looking back if he missed the deadline so he can finally die with a clear conscience. After all, he had always been ready for a brutal death, yet one single thought still haunts him. If he had been given that exact same chance, what would have actually happened? He slipped into total darkness, but surprisingly, this was not the end of the line. He suddenly started hearing a distant voice begging him to wake up. He slowly peeled his eyes open, staring at a young guy right in front of him, and groggily asked who he was. This kid immediately slapped him across the face, crying and begging him to wake up. The MC indignantly yelled, "What the heck is he doing?" Completely confused, he touched his stinging cheek and thought, wait, what just happened? Did he seriously just get slapped? What absolute moron would dare do that? Wiping away his messy tears, the young guy called him young Master Lucian and desperately pleaded with him to come back to his senses. Hearing that ridiculous name, he was totally baffled. He glanced around the room and instantly realized something was incredibly wrong. What on earth happened to his hands? Where did all his rough calluses and battle scars go? This clear skin belongs to some ridiculously pampered aristocrat. And who is this random crying kid anyway? He literally just smacked a guy half to death, and now he is the one bawling. The young man started sobbing even louder, crying out that he was just so incredibly happy because he really thought he was dead. His heart practically stopped. If something like that actually happened, it would be fatal for him as a personal servant and a total disaster for the entire noble estate. The MC thought, what kind of absolute nonsense is this? Young master, personal servant, he has literally never used those words in his entire life. The main issue here is that he vividly remembers dying. His head was sliced completely off. Nobody walks away from that. So how in the world is he breathing? You and I both know exactly where this is going, right? He pieces it together and realizes the obvious. He woke up inside a total stranger's body. He strolled right up to the mirror and smirked, realizing he now had such an unbelievably handsome face. It was super obvious that these refined looks belonged to a noble and clearly from an obscenely wealthy aristocratic family too. He glanced at his personal servant, deciding the first thing he needed to do was gather some solid intel. The kid's name was apparently Hans. The MC turned and said he had a quick question, which made the servant instantly nervous, as he stammered that he could ask absolutely anything. He calmly asked what year it was. Hans was totally thrown off by the weird question, but blamed the medicine, replying that it was year 846 of the imperial calendar. The MC was completely stunned. That was 15 years after his actual death. It turns out he had somehow returned to the past. He had no idea how or why, but he could not panic now. Right now, he needed to focus on the main priority. He tiredly grabbed his aching head and said he had one more question. Was this servant tired of living? The poor kid flinched in absolute terror and asked what he meant. The MC coldly stated that a pathetic servant dared to touch his master without permission while he was completely unconscious. So what do you and I make of this? He asked about the rules and his identity, leaving Hans totally nervous. The servant immediately bowed and apologized, crying that he was just so excited that he completely forgot his proper manners. All right, stick with me. We are jumping straight into the chaotic life of Lucian Valdec. Wait, that legendary Valdec family. Oh, absolutely. They are the Empire's ultimate pillar, fiercely backing the Emperor since the literal dawn of time. Their raw power basically matches the royals, a truly monstrous house. And our guy, he knows all their dark secrets. Because 15 years ago, he was a simple guard right here at this massive estate. Completely bizarre. He literally died and woke up at his old workplace, but now wearing the third son's body. He just laughed. Pure comedy. In his past life, being a nobody meant he swallowed every disgusting insult and unimaginable humiliation out there. Suddenly, he gets a golden ticket. He always dreamed of how high he could climb with real privilege and power. Well, fate just handed him the ultimate cheat code. Time to aim for the absolute top. Accepting this crazy second chance, Lucian dresses up and takes a walk scanning his new turf. The Valdec mansion did not disappoint. Even as a veteran mercenary, he had never witnessed wealth this insane. He needs to adapt to this flashy lifestyle fast. But get this, stepping outside the servants act totally weird, whispering rumors that he was literally dying. He corners Hans asking why the vibe is so weirdly tense. Hans awkwardly admits it makes total sense. Apparently this guy barricaded himself in his bedroom for over a year, completely alone. Lucian just chuckles, totally confused. You and I both have to wonder, what was this pampered noble actually hiding from? Brushing it off as rich kid drama doesn't fit. The estate would never tolerate a brat acting this recklessly. Because this place is run by a literal tyrant, Archduke Sigmund. An iron-willed monster who protected the empire for decades. That terrifying man would never just watch his son rot in bed. So it comes down to two options. Either Lucian was worthless enough to be completely disinherited, or the Archduke had a massive reason to ignore him entirely. Until he uncovers the truth, dodging his terrifying new dad at all costs is priority number one. Suddenly a butler rushes over, shocked that the crazy rumors of his full recovery are real. Seeing the young master awake is pure joy for him. He anxiously asks if walking is too difficult right now. Lucian instantly recognizes the guy. The absolute backbone of the Valdec household. Edwin, the head butler. He started as an enemy hostage, but his insane talents leveled him up to managing this entire massive aristocratic household. The Archduke's literal right-hand man. This is really, really bad. I know what you are thinking. Worst luck ever, right? He just bumped into the one guy who will notice his street manners. His only saving grace. The butler hasn't seen the real Lucian in over 12 months. Time to play the arrogant noble. Channeling his old commander's swagger, he flashes a polite smile and thanks the butler for his deep concern. Thanks to his loyal prayers, he's recovering perfectly. He casually claims he neglected his duties too long, stepping out to check on the estate. Bumping into Edwin was fantastic luck. He hopes the grand family prospers. Edwin hides his shock like a pro, smiling back. House Valdec is peaking, and he is absolutely thrilled to see the young master standing strong. Lucian laughs it off, asking how anything could go wrong with Edwin running the show. Hook, line, and sinker. The guy suspects absolutely nothing. Keeping up the act, Lucian smoothly mentions his worries were totally pointless. Time to make a clean escape. He fakes being tired from his walk, but Edwin sharply cuts in. He needs him to stay. The air turns freezing. Sweating bullets, Lucian hears the worst news. Archduke Sigmund demands an immediate meeting. Entering the study, his father's glare is deadly. Sigmund doesn't hold back at all. He asks one chilling question. Why aren't you dead? Utterly stunned, Lucian stammers out a confused reply. Sigmund scoffs, claiming he almost ignored this. He tolerated the neglected duties and the spoiled brat routine, using his mother's death as a pathetic shield. But he finally crossed the line. Hiding in his room for a year was bad enough. But actively giving up on his own life and trying to end it, unforgivable. Completely blindsided, Lucian suddenly remembers waking up here, so that is exactly why poor Hans was crying his eyes out earlier. Panicking, he begs his dad, swearing it is a huge misunderstanding. The Archduke coldly declares this is his very last chance. Speak up and spill every single secret right now. So what do you and I make of this? He swallowed sleeping pills just to get his terrifying dad's attention. Absolute madness. Stick with me here because our main character is about to uncover a massive, shocking mystery about his past. 15 years ago, while he served in the Royal Guard, the Archduke's third son died simultaneously. Archduke Sigmund Valdec actually has 4 heirs, all born to different women. In a decade of serving House Valdec, he bumped into those arrogant young masters and their power-hungry mothers plenty of times. Yet Lucian and his mom, total blank, she died of a sudden sickness right after his guard duty began. And Lucian suffered that exact same grim fate. Back then, he figured the two were just cursed with horribly weak immune systems. He brushed it off back then. But the dark reality was entirely different. Losing his mom and surviving this cutthroat noble family completely broke the kid. Desperate for his distant father's attention, he swallowed a dangerous handful of heavy sleeping pills. Confined to his room for over 12 months, he completely underestimated how frail his body had become. His ruined system could not fight off the toxic drugs, and he just died. Initially, he believed the Archduke was purely cruel for ignoring his own son for a full year. But piecing it together, it makes sense. Beneath the mask of a ruthless ruler, he was secretly terrified for his sickly child's safety, like any normal dad. But feeling sorry for his dad, no time for that. Our guy already has one foot in the grave. Now pay attention because this cold-blooded ultimatum is absolutely his final chance to survive. His dream of a shiny new life is literally falling apart. One wrong word to this scary duke, and best case scenario, banished to a silent monastery to pray away his sins, totally isolated from the world. Worst case, shipped off to the frozen northern wasteland to freeze his literal bones off every single day. Fighting ugly beasts and starving to death? Hell no. He sacrificed way too much for a second chance. He refuses to let his epic future get derailed by some tragic family baggage that is not even his fault. Staring down his dad, he declares that if honesty is wanted, absolute honesty is what he gets. Starting strong, he drops a massive apology for ruining the prestigious Valdec name with his reckless stunt and causing unnecessary panic. He takes full responsibility. No dodging the blame, no weak excuses at all. Whatever brutal punishment drops next, he will take it like a man. Annoyed, his father snaps that fancy apologies cannot fix history. But before the Duke finishes, our boy boldly interrupts with a wild suggestion. The Archduke freezes in confusion. The kid basically says the past is dead, but he miraculously survived the poison and is still breathing. No more whining over yesterday. From this second forward, he is claiming a brand new future. So he asks for one favor, not from a terrifying ruler, but from a dad. Just give him a blessing. A rebellious kid begs for forgiveness, and the parent takes him back with pride. Isn't that the ultimate heaven-defying bond between a father and his son? Edwin stands there, totally stunned. The crushing tension in the room instantly shifts. You and I both know the old Lucian would be shaking right, not anymore. The Archduke stays deadly quiet while our hero's heart violently hammers. Sigmund questions if this brat is actually lecturing him on parenting. But unexpectedly, he grins, laughing that getting old guarantees you witness some insane miracles. Lucian hides a smirk and exhales quietly. His massive gamble paid off exactly as planned. Skipping the pathetic begging was the right move. The Archduke absolutely despises spineless little cowards hiding in corners. He respects rabid dogs ready to bite. Sigmund notes that brushing shoulders with the Grim Reaper cured his pathetic anxiety. Since he is boasting about tomorrow, the Duke demands to hear his big master plan. Closing his eyes, flashing back to that brutal clash with the commander, he declares he will fix this trash body and master the sword. Caught off guard and totally skeptical, his dad bluntly reminds him that he is practically a walking skeleton. But our guy insists some heavy meals and deep sleep will magically solve everything. Sigmund is genuinely shocked. Smiling, he praises his silver tongue, deciding to wait and see if it is just arrogant bluffing. Then, waving his butler over, he issues a sudden, mysterious order to deliver something special. Saying it is way more useful than a boring moral lecture the kid would completely ignore. Completely confused, our hero watches Edwin bow, deeply promising the Archduke it will be handled right away. Lucian racks his brain trying to guess the secret prize until he sees the glorious truth. So what do we learn here? Sassing your overpowered dad somehow gets you literal carts loaded with pure gold. So is this what it really means to be noble? You and I are about to watch him flip the script. That mysterious secret was just an insane pile of cash, 1 month's allowance. With that much gold, he can completely overhaul this trash body and brew that ultimate elixir. Meanwhile, Sigmund heads to the greenhouse with Edwin. The butler remembers the late Duchess absolutely treasured this exact spot. The Archduke hadn't stepped foot here in forever, so naturally Edwin saw this coming. But showing up in person, that is all because young Master Lucian has changed. Sure, he fell out of favor, but he is still the son of the late Duchess, the woman the Archduke loved deeply. He would never just abandon the kid. Sigmund calls his past behavior completely pathetic, always looking away, trembling like he was terrified of his own shadow. One loud word and the kid would cower like a beaten dog. Nothing like his mother's fiery spirit. Sigmund figured the boy only inherited her looks, nothing else. But today, for the very first time, the Archduke thinks he might be wrong. Edwin agrees he has never seen the boy make eye contact and speak up. Smiling, Edwin notes how surprisingly firm Lucian held his ground. There was a true sense of calm and noble dignity in his vibe. The kid was always too gentle, falling way behind his brothers. But at the end of the day, the fierce blood of the Archduke still runs in his veins. Sigmund just smirks. Watch closely, because we are about to find out. Talk is cheap, and the trials coming for this kid are brutal. Edwin admits he is worried a major problem just popped up. Lucian's allowance is back on, but they just found clear evidence of massive embezzlement. The investigation points straight to the second young master, Jordi Valdec. Even worse, Jordi fired Lucian's headmaid and planted his own spy. He clearly wants to keep his little brother on a tight leash. Sigmund points out that Jordi is capable, sure, but he is way too narrow-minded, his biggest flaw. Hating Lucian's maternal relatives is one thing, but this level of obsession, crazy. Edwin asks if he should step in and handle it. Sigmund orders him to stay out of it. Edwin hesitates. Isn't that too cruel? The kid is just taking his very first steps. The Archduke replies coldly. If Lucian had paid attention to his surroundings, this mess would have never touched him. Honestly, Lucian is simply paying the price for his cowardly past. It is the perfect test. Sigmund wants to see exactly how he handles the heat. If Lucian cannot crush a problem this small, then he is totally useless anyway. Valdec blood gives him the key, but he has to kick that door wide open himself. Fast forward a few days. Our guy locks himself up with Hans standing guard outside. It has been exactly 3 days since that massive payout dropped. Let's pause for a second. Hans assumes getting that money back was a brutal emotional struggle for Lucian, considering how terrible their father-son relationship really is. He imagines Lucian having to gather all his willpower, carrying this incredibly heavy burden on his soul just to keep moving forward. But guess what? Lucian literally does not care. He is only plotting how to spend the cash while brewing that crazy elixir. Wiping sweat from his forehead, he checks his notes. He knows perfectly well that Hans must have a million questions right now, but since the guy is guarding the door exactly as ordered, his loyalty is absolutely rock solid. A noble suddenly playing with alchemical tools when he has never touched them before, super suspicious. Plus, he is hunting down a stupidly expensive rare herb that only blooms under the moonlight, and nobody even fully understands what its properties actually are. It is called moongrass. And the craziest part, this kid dropped every single coin he had on it. He made Hans buy out the entire market. It looks completely insane now, but in 1 year, the price is going to explode 10, maybe 20 times over. Then moongrass will be worth an absolute fortune. He laughs out loud, totally ecstatic. But honestly, he has to respect the original alchemist's absolute courage here. Back then, making this remedy was a massive gamble. Yet someone risked everything, buying up literally all the moongrass in the entire empire. A lifetime bet with their guild's survival on the line. And thanks to that crazy hustle, nectar, the drink of the gods, was born. Calling a simple potion godly was bold enough to get them slapped with actual blasphemy charges. But the second nectar's true power was revealed, everyone instantly bowed down, completely forgetting those threats. He pops the cork, inhales the rich aroma of the completed elixir, smiling like a total winner. For over 1,000 years, the world had one unbreakable rule. Your mana level is locked at birth, and absolutely nobody can break that limit. Fate controlled your talent period. But what you and I are about to see changes everything. Stick with me here. We're talking about breaking impossible limits. And the one thing that absolutely shattered those old rules, the legendary nectar. One sip of this stuff turns total trash into a pretty decent swordsman. Sure, his homemade version is barely a shadow of the real thing. Honestly, it is basically a cheap knockoff right now. But for getting this completely wrecked body back on its feet, nothing works better. Talk about lucky. When chaos eventually destroyed the empire, the Alchemists Guild burned first. This nectar recipe was totally overpowered, deemed way too dangerous, and completely wiped out. So he scraped together every clue to recreate it. Though most test subjects actually died from insane side effects, he shrugged that off, stopped wasting time, and just chugged the elixir. What matters is the aftermath. Converting raw nature into personal power, that is how you get pure mana. The power you draw depends entirely on smooth circulation. Moving and returning that mana through the body changes everything drastically. Now, pay close attention. He uses that nectar to brutally force open his blocked mana channels. But even with channels open, what is actually going on? Zero resistance. No agonizing pain that usually hits when absorbing raw mana. Instead, mana flows perfectly like coming home. Even literal babies have impurities blocking their energy, but not him. Is Lucian actually an absolute genius? Well, evening finally hits. Hans paces around, nervously waiting for the young master. The doors swing open and our guy casually asks for updates. The servant rushes over, practically crying, asking if he has any idea how long he was stuck in there. He called out but got silence. And since entry was strictly forbidden, he stayed outside, absolutely terrified something terrible had happened. He was sick with worry. But seeing that confident smirk, he just freezes. Totally baffled, he says his name and inspects him from every single angle, confirming it is him. Yet somehow he just cannot shake the weird feeling that this is a completely different guy. Lucian smirks, mentally calling him a rascal. He knew the old Lucian perfectly. No wonder he senses a massive change. This body needs serious food and time to bulk up, so his outward appearance remains the same. But inside, that is what matters. Internal changes are happening at lightning speed thanks to his innate talent. He is absolutely sure. This kid's insane potential rivals the greatest world-changing heroes in history. Let that sink in for a second. If he plays this perfectly, he reclaims his old mercenary strength in just 1 year. He casually tells Hans that all this success is thanks to him. Hans is completely lost. Grabbing his shoulders, our guy says to remember karma, bad deeds get punished, good deeds get rewarded. Listen up, he will not repeat himself. With an evil chuckle, he orders him to sell everything and hoard moongrass. He guarantees a life of pure luxury. They are climbing straight to the top. Hans stares weirdly, making our guy grin, thinking he is just jealous. Back then, chill nobles were super rare. A week later, they head into the forest. Lucian smiles, soaking in the absolute bliss. Is life actually this easy? Fancy dinners on demand? Spotless rooms without lifting a single finger. They even make his bed. Quite the upgrade from constantly starving. This rich life let him focus entirely on recovery, while also pondering a nagging little problem. He pulls out a drawing from his pocket. A sketch of his past life, the mercenary named Jake. He asked the captain about him. The guy just coughed and said nobody remotely like that ever joined the guard. Some random stranger took his old shift now, but honestly, probably for the best. Meeting himself would just cause a massive headache. He is definitely not ready to face his past yet. He would just die of embarrassment. Hans nervously calls out, asking if they are really going there. He swore never to step foot on that training ground. Confused, our guy replies, "Did I say that?" Annoyed, Hans shouts that, yes, he absolutely said that. After fighting the second young master, he swore never to return. Judging by that frantic reaction, our main character starts piecing together exactly what went down here. You and I know exactly where this is heading. Fencing was the second young master's perfect excuse. Under the guise of just teaching him fencing. Stick with me here, this payback arc is wild. They basically brainwashed young Lucian into fearing violence, keeping him far away from the training grounds. But he calmly told his servant to stop worrying. But that was the old him. Hans was still stressing out, so our MC confidently said, "Just trust me." Meanwhile, an arrogant knight named Hendrik got the news. The young master actually showed up here willingly. That completely caught him off guard. His underling reported that Lucian was currently wandering around, inspecting the training grounds with his servant. Hendrik, thoughtfully twirling his mustache like a classic villain, wondered why this pathetic puppy even came here. There was no way he forgot the humiliation from back then, but hey, he could use this. He ordered his men to alert the second young master immediately. In the meantime, he'd prepare a very warm welcome. Meanwhile, Lucian looked around the massive training grounds completely surprised. He hoped for something good, but this setup totally blew past all his expectations. Top-tier weapons everywhere that wouldn't shatter after 2 hits. Plus, there was massive open space for literally any combat maneuver you could think of. And all this crazy wealth belonged to just one single guy. If he could just train here, he might actually save more of his people. That heavy thought brought him down a bit. But then a loud knight approached, breaking his focus. Hendrik smirked, saying his eyes must be playing tricks. Now watch this fake guy closely. The third young master, huge surprise. He claimed he didn't believe the news. He mocked how just a year ago, during training with Lord Geordie, Lucian ran away completely terrified, too scared to even look back, like a pathetic little lamb running from a wolf. He figured that was why Lucian still shook with fear, just looking at this arena. Bringing a lowly servant into the sacred warrior space. Clearly, it had been way too long since they last met. He loudly bragged about how a year ago he and the second young master personally fixed Lucian's fighting stance, assuming Lucian hadn't blocked out the trauma, of course. He fondly remembered the kid shaking in terror. To him, that was an absolutely glorious time. Our MC chuckled internally. So arrogant, a real knight is the pure embodiment of honor and absolute loyalty. Usually they come from high society, noble families. Since childhood, they survive brutal combat training and strict etiquette lessons, and only after proving their worth on bloody battlefields do they actually earn that fancy knight title. But at the end of the day, they are honestly just guard dogs wearing really expensive collars. The Lord gives them wealth and status. In return, they must respect royal blood. Yet this clown actually dares to act this disrespectful. Sure, Lucian's weak standing played a huge part, but still, he is literally just Geordie's attack dog. He's only this arrogant because he feels backed up. If MC could, he'd give him some real hellish training. He already pictured hurling throwing knives at him, but if he did, the Archduke would absolutely never forgive him. Knights are the family's core fighting force after all. Punishing one without official paperwork just creates nasty political drama with the vassals. It's still way too early, his time hasn't come yet. We're about to see the MC flip the script. He calmly said, avoiding the grounds over old drama was just dumb. He planned to visit often. A whole year passed. Time to catch up, right? The knight just burst out laughing at that, mocking his sudden desperate urge to finally learn some basic fencing. Lucian asked. Too late, he was only 16 years old. Hendrik smugly offered to explain since the kid was clueless. According to him, if you're over 15, your martial arts career is completely over. Sword form is a sacred ancestral technique. It supposedly grants magical enlightenment to anyone who perfectly repeats the movements. It's pure ancient wisdom to develop the body. But it only works under one condition: your path to magic must be fully open. And supposedly at 16, that magic path slams completely shut, turning those sacred techniques into totally ordinary exercises. Without magic, sword forms are just empty, pointless stretching. He patted Lucian's shoulder with a nasty grin, joking that being a failure totally suited him. Hey, he actually had a solid chance at becoming the Empire's greatest master of failures. He mocked him, saying he should save time and find a real job. Maybe dedicate his pathetic life to pulling weeds in the garden instead. Everyone has their proper role. Lucian stayed dead silent, and Hendrik smiled smugly, thinking he had crushed the kid into absolute speechless submission. But here's the reality. That rule about magic closing at 16 is a complete lie, pure garbage that falls apart under any basic test. But that hardly mattered. He could just play dumb later since his main goal would have already been totally achieved. Creating an idiot too clueless to object, completely crushed by his own ignorance. A worthless wimp mocked by his own servants too terrified to move. Same pathetic character from last year. So what do you and I expect here? Lucian suddenly dropped the weak act, saying Hendrik's little speech completely failed to match the facts. The magic path closes at 35, not 16. So, as far as he knew, absolutely nothing was stopping him from starting his training right now. Alright, let's jump right in. The knight tries hiding his nerves mockingly, asking if our boy is really that confident. Lucian says he's dead wrong. Would his brother Geordie agree? Obviously, it's a completely well-known fact to everyone. Smoothing his hair like a boss, he figures he's won. Drop Geordie's name and this guy won't dare talk back. Lucian doubles down. Yep, his brother totally said the exact same thing. Suddenly he grabs poor Hans by the head. He yells that a nasty curse must be hanging over House Valdec, right? Hans is totally freaking out. Holding his head, he screams at the knight, why the heck drag him into this mess? They're doubting a basic fact even a street dog knows. Grown men completely confused by something this simple. How many real talents missed out because of this fake info? He practically fakes, bursting into tragic tears. Just think his own brother is an idiot. Hendrik just stands there totally bewildered. Pounding his chest dramatically, our MC tells him not to interrupt. If true, this is a massive disaster for their family's reputation. Smirking, he asks, surely a knight wouldn't lie to his lord's son. Hendrik panics. What does he mean? Is the kid accusing him of straight-up lying? Lucian brushes it off, forget he said anything. He just blurted out nonsense because he couldn't believe his ears. A loyal Valdec knight wouldn't ever stoop that low, right? Hendrik nervously agrees, stepping closer and desperately trying to save face. So obviously, they can't just ignore this massive problem. Now, watch closely. Smirking, Lucian decides to show him exactly what happens when you run your mouth without realizing the danger. If he just wanted to mock him, he would have totally ignored the guy's stupid comments. Raising his voice, he theatrically spreads his arms. It's not just knights, everyone here views him with pure disgust. Sure, he forgot his duty and wasted time, but who could really blame him for that? But that is beside the point. If a knight and his brother are losing talented fighters over fake news, he absolutely refuses to just look the other way. This completely ruins the Valdec military power. It puts their subjects in danger, shattering the foundation of their safety. Such a massive risk. Hearing this epic speech, poor Hans actually starts tearing up. Lucian declares that bearing the Valdec name, he has every right to be furious. Proud of his own acting skills, he asks Hendrik if he finally understands how bad this is. Pointing right at him, he threatens serious consequences. He's reporting this straight to his father to fix their broken discipline. Sweating bullets, the knight is stunned. The kid who used to cry over his dad is acting like a boss. You're probably wondering, was this little brat always this dramatic and crazy? He went from a scared lamb to a wild wolf. Right then, Geordie stomps onto the training ground demanding answers. Hendrik looks over, completely panicked. Meanwhile, Lucian just smirks, perfect timing for this guy to finally show his face. Spotting his brother Geordie literally grimaces in pure disgust. Hendrik rushes over, desperately promising to explain everything. He starts babbling wildly about the whole crazy situation, but Geordie just raises a hand. Shut up. No explanations needed here. Stepping closer, he whispers angrily that he saw this absolute disgrace with his own two eyes. Getting baited by a kid young enough to be his son, Geordie is beyond disappointed in his pathetic knight. He tells him to wipe that stupid look off his face before embarrassing him further, glaring right at Lucian. Hans hides behind Lucian, terrified. The guy looks furious, but Lucian just smirks, thinking Geordie's angry face is absolutely perfect. Geordie, the second son. Ever since he gave up on life, he literally just takes his anger out on helpless servants. A true aristocrat, yeah right. Just a massive ego mixed with a nasty, hysterical personality. And worst of all, he's incredibly vindictive. Once you're useless to him, he ruins your life and tosses you aside. But actually, this plays right into Lucian's hands. Lucian smiles, saying his brother looks like he's doing great. Geordie scoffs, calling him a completely thick-headed idiot. Whatever lies he fed, Hendrik Geordie claims he watched the whole circus from start to finish. How dare he insult Valdec? Honor, Lucian plays dumb. When did he ever do that? Care to be more specific? And that's where we leave it. Trust me, you'll love how this mess plays out. Alright, stick with me. Hiding and stirring up trouble was a massive mistake, but surprisingly he actually held back the scolding. He knew exactly how much blood he had spilled for House Valdec. The true cost of his brutal loyalty was obvious, completely unlike his own. The kid used to run away from sword practice in pure terror. Does he honestly believe he has any right to point fingers now? First up, he needs to show some respect. The knights are the only reason the Valdec bloodline hasn't been completely wiped out. Turning to the group, he smoothly apologized for the absolute mess his brother caused today. Just the mistake of a foolish kid, he claimed, begging for their mercy. He promised to keep his wild younger brother on a very tight leash. Seeing that utterly nasty grin, Lucian's face darkened. So this was exactly how he wanted to play his cards, huh? Turns out the guy actually had a brain. He was the one hurling all those brutal insults. Yet he totally flipped the script, making it look like Lucian insulted the knights while playing the noble defender himself. He definitely won this round. Smiling, he said it was expected of his older brother. Just a tiny misunderstanding with Sir Hendrik, apparently. Honestly, he should have been punished for his attitude, but instead, he got served a valuable lesson. After all, like an absolute fool, he called his own brother brainless. Hans started sweating and begged him to stay quiet. But he kept pushing, claiming he was deeply ashamed for spitting out such offensive words. Today, he was saved by his brother's massive generosity. The knights, completely baffled by this whole bizarre scene, our MC excitedly yelled at his servant, demanding they immediately write down his older brother's supposed wisdom. Forget paper, go fetch the absolute highest quality silk. Watch closely, this is where everything shifts. He used this moment to shatter Lucian's weakling image forever. That pathetic former third son, completely gone now. He casually told Geordie he was leaving, quietly dropping that there was zero reason for either of them to stick around. Furious, Geordie snapped that he had zero respect. Did he seriously think he could just walk away? In response, he simply asked, "Did you forget? Our father has been watching you like a hawk lately?" He had nothing to lose, but Geordie sure did. Met with silence, he took that as a yes, grabbed his servant, and waved goodbye. Right after, he whispered for the kid to run much faster. They had to bail now. Meanwhile, Hendrik awkwardly stepped up to Geordie, asking if they were really just letting him walk away. He stayed completely silent, shooting absolute daggers at Lucian's retreating back. Getting out of there, Hans nervously checked over his shoulder. Would they actually survive this? He knew Lord Geordie's explosive rage better than anyone alive. He was never going to forgive them. Even if they escaped today, he was terrified that brutal night would end him in some dark alley completely unnoticed. The poor guy literally burst into tears. Our MC told him to chill out, knowing only victims truly understood that kind of crushing fear. When an awful boss ruins everything and just bails, oh yeah, he knew exactly how incredibly toxic that felt. Flashing a confident smile, he promised the kid it wouldn't happen, telling him to stop worrying. No knight would dare pull that stunt, and he definitely wouldn't just watch either. Reaching out, he admitted he dragged him into this huge mess. Whenever a boss acts like a total idiot, it's always the poor subordinate taking the hit. And as his personal servant, he definitely caught the worst of it all. Hans was visibly touched. The MC swore that from now on his people would never be humiliated or terrified just because he acted stupidly. You and I know peace never lasts. Time passed, and pacing the hall, Lucian realized he had figured it all out since the training incident. Why it was so quiet. Geordie isn't the guy to just take an insult lying down, and now the ugly truth was completely obvious. The guy had been plotting a wildly petty, dirty trick behind his back. Crushing the budget report in pure rage, he screamed, "Does he have any clue how long I've waited for this?" Hans fully agreed. They couldn't let him get away with this garbage. Our MC asked, "Are you ready?" He punched the air with total confidence, screaming in absolute fury, how dare they mess with his cash. Hans yelled that they slashed his monthly pay too. All of this chaos started with today's shocking budget report. Today was payday. His account was supposed to be fully loaded to buy gear. At least that was the original plan. But the report was a total nightmare. His pocket money was slashed by 75%, and Hans's salary tanked by 30%. Then it hit him, that greedy second son was stealing his funds, using the headmaid stationed in his very own wing. Trust me, stealing noble funds is a crime that ends in execution. Get ready for war. Stick with me here, because he just pulled off something absolutely outrageous by turning a massive weakness into a totally brilliant advantage. After his mom, the third lady, passed away, Lucian handed over the entire management of his budget to someone else. He trusted Dana, the former headmaid, who had been super loyal for years, totally not this terrible new girl. When he walked up, she just smiled and said it was her first time seeing him in person. Real nice to meet him. Her name was Jenny, the brand new headmaid hired to replace Lady Dana. She claimed she wanted to introduce herself right away, but he was basically a shut-in. Had he finally decided to end his long, pathetic wandering phase, Hans was absolutely furious at her disrespect, telling her to watch her mouth with the young master. But Lucian just calmly waved him off. She was kind of right. They weren't here to argue over tiny details. Way bigger fish to fry today. He told the smirking maid he was getting straight to the point. She drew up the budget right. He flashed the financial report. She just chuckled and asked, "Is that why he called her down here?" Yep, she handled the budget. She smugly pointed out that since he gave all authority to the last maid, she was just doing her job as instructed. Though honestly, she had to admit she was pretty stunned. Why interrogate her for doing her job? He really should have been managing his own money from the start. Lucian knew she would pull this exact excuse. Total mistake by the old Lucian. He nodded, saying he understood. Maybe she had no choice. But even ignoring that garbage, there was one thing he absolutely could not accept. He checked the math. Almost all the funds his father sent went straight into bumping up the servants' wages. Considering how much they suffered from his past neglect, you could call it a fair compensation. Now, pay close attention here. Could she explain why his loyal guy Hans got his pay completely slashed? Isn't that a little too obvious? She just let out a laugh, claiming she totally hadn't even noticed that happened. Just a tiny mistake. Running the whole mansion is hard, so she couldn't track every little coin. Plus, everyone here knew how incredibly overworked she was. She glanced at the other servants. Right, guys. They awkwardly winced, forced fake smiles, and nodded. Lucian instantly knew he was wasting his breath here. He let out a massive sigh, turned right around, and told Hans they were leaving. It felt like his own limbs were obeying someone else entirely. But before walking out, he dropped one final question, warning her to answer very carefully. Does she actually know who her real master is? She smirked and told him to go ask young Master Geordie. Lucian realized right then to survive this mess he had to completely carve out the rot. So that exact same evening, they hit the tavern. Hans was so confused. Didn't he say they were going fishing to chill out? Why the heck were they here? Lucian watched the huge guys brawling in the ring and the crowds betting smirking as he asked, "Can you really not feel it? This is where the big players hang." He approached the bar, but the guy sneered, saying this wasn't a place for little brats. He told Lucian to take a hike while he was still acting nice. Lucian just slammed a heavy bag of coins down. What kind of trashy tavern is so insanely picky about its paying customers? He pulled his hood back. Now I know what you're thinking, why hadn't he fired that awful maid yet? Well, there were a few reasons. First, she wasn't just a maid. She was the daughter of the wet nurse who raised Geordie from the cradle. Touching her meant sparking a massive turf war. Second, his own faction was an absolute dumpster fire, way worse than he ever imagined. Desperate times call for insane measures. And finally, the Grand Duke definitely already knew about this whole mess. Basically, cleaning up this exact garbage fire was just another brutal test. Time to prove his worth. The second those shiny coins hit the counter, the bartender suddenly became his best friend and seated him at the tables. Lucian grabbed his cards. Why not make some easy cash while he was waiting? Hours flew by. He completely wrecked another player, and a massive crowd gathered watching Lucian's winning streak. The loser sat there in pure shock. Lucian just smirked. Is that really it? I'm just getting warmed up. How about one more quick game? The guy instantly folded, terrified of losing even more cash. Hans stared at the mountain of chips, grabbing his head in panic. When did he learn to gamble like this? Lucian kicked his feet up and called the next victim. Can nobody in this joint actually beat him? He only showed up because of the hype, but is this seriously all they have? Sitting on a literal pile of gold, he decided it was finally time to make his real move. Bang. The doors burst open. Right on schedule. You and I are going to love what happens next. Alright, stick with me here. You're about to see how our guy handles this smirking manager who finally saunters over with a fake apology. Meet Hugo, the boss of this joint. With a quick snap of his fingers, his bouncers instantly clear the entire floor. Kicking out every other player, Hugo claims it's an inconvenience, but honestly, he couldn't care less. All that matters is giving young Master Lucian some absolute peace. Smirking, Hugo mentions it's been ages since Lucian showed his face in public, but he recognized the VIP instantly. Then again, without killer instincts, you don't survive in the underworld. Hugo apologizes again, but Lucian just waves it off. No big deal, he's just here to chill. Hugo glances at the massive chip pile, looking genuinely impressed. It's been forever since anyone hit a jackpot like that. So how about the boss steps in for a personal game? Grinning like a shark, Hugo plays humble. Claims he's not on Lucian's level, but running this casino, he's definitely picked up a few dirty little tricks along the way. Why not kill some time together? But Hans isn't buying it. He begs Lucian to leave, they've already cleaned this place out enough. His gut is screaming danger. Hans has seen some terrifying monsters back at the palace, but eyes that dead. Extremely rare. Our MC shoots him a look. Gotta admit, the old man's years of loyal service are paying off. He's totally spot on. Now, pay attention. Hugo Blackshark. A name destined to terrify the entire underworld, starting in the grimiest back alleys with nothing but raw strength. Through pure violence and ruthless scheming, he crushed absolutely everyone in his path. He skyrocketed to the top, taking total control of gambling, smuggling, and high-profile assassinations. Boom. King of the Night. The absolute ruler of the 5 territories' criminal empire. Later on, he uses the empire's collapse to his advantage, scoring a baron title and becoming an official imperial general. Right now, still a rookie. But Hans is definitely onto something here. The guy is lethal. But today Lucian is here to hunt a shark. He casually agrees to a simple card game. Hugo suggests going all out, no betting limits. Gotta make sure their honored VIP doesn't die of boredom, right? Smacking his fist into his palm, Lucian lights up. Finally, someone who speaks his kind of crazy language. Hugo smiles, calling it an honor. But inside, he's mocking him. Thinks Lucian is just a spoiled brat relying on his family name. Little does Hugo know he's basically wrapping a giant noose straight around his own neck. He shoots the dealer a sly look. This situation is playing out perfectly. Robbing a VIP wasn't the original plan, but cocky kids like him always get way too invested after a few losses. He plans to bleed this naive kid dry. But suddenly, our MC pauses, acting like he forgot his manners. Hugo blinks, asking if there's a problem. Lucian smirks. Everything's great, but before they deal, he just has one tiny question. He doesn't mind a question, right? Hugo flashes a fake smile, swearing he's an open book. Even says he's already taking a massive liking to the young master. I know what you're thinking, shady boss. But Lucian notes his loyal crew actually proves he's a pretty solid leader. If he had crossed the line, the Valdec family would have wiped him off the map ages ago. Hugo sweats, claiming he knows his place and respects the higher-ups. Lucian just laughs, telling him to chill out. The Valdec family doesn't just crush people for fun. So, be totally honest here. When exactly does mass production start? Hugo plays confused, but Lucian instantly shuts that down. Don't play dumb. He drops the bomb, the forbidden powder from Vestra. Instantly, Hugo panics. You can literally feel the room's tension spike. The servants absolutely freeze in shock, while Hans starts shouting in pure panic. Hugo stammers, playing dumb again. Forbidden powders. He has no clue what that even means. Lucian presses harder. The guy heard him perfectly, so why fake it? Isn't he secretly working for the Marquis of Logren? Chuckling, he exposes the whole plot, using contraband to completely destabilize the Valdec territory. Imagine a high-ranking Marquis stooping to such pathetic, cheap tricks. Doesn't anyone respect boundaries anymore? Does Hugo agree? Or wait. In this setup, the shark himself is definitely the attacker. Who else has the nerve to pull this garbage on Valdec lands? Black Shark's ultimate secret is officially out in the open. You and I both know Valdec is a nightmare enemy. Normally this secret stays buried for 2 whole years. The Duke would finally get a report and raid the place, but by then, Hugo would have already ghosted the city entirely. Past failures pay off. Sweating, Hugo bows, desperately swearing, it's just a huge misunderstanding. Stick with me, let's dive into this wild setup. He acts like a broke merchant counting pennies. How could he sell something illegal? Shaking like a leaf, he screams that jealous rivals must have spread some dirty rumors about his business. He begs for a chance to catch the liar himself, but Lucian just stares, so it is just a false rumor, right? So this rice mill he runs is totally normal. Nothing sketchy at all. And that massive underground passage is just a palace back door. Lucian asks one last time, what stage is his secret plan at? Hugo freezes in pure horror. Does this kid actually know about the fake shop and the hidden tunnels? If the secret is out, excuses are useless. So his brain pivots to murder. This unguarded noble brat could easily go down in a single strike. A waiter grabs his blade. Lucian instantly warns him to think very carefully before taking another step. Hans shakes, practically crying in fear. But Lucian coldly reminds them their lives are on the line. They better rethink this whole tough guy act. Hugo snaps back to reality. Attacking the heir of Valdec, that is basically begging for a quick death. Panic sets in, survival instincts take over, and he instantly hits the floor, begging the young master for mercy. Lucian didn't come here just for fun. Otherwise, Hugo's head would already be rolling on the floor. Lucian smirks. Hugo is full-on sobbing now, screaming that he will gladly be his loyal dog. If the master wants him to bark, he will bark right now. Order him to crawl, and he is crawling. Just please, young master, spare his miserable life. Seeing the boss break, all his tough thugs drop to their knees and start begging too. Now watch closely, because this is where the power dynamic completely flips. Lucian tosses a casino chip down, agreeing a loyal dog wouldn't bite. Plus, he desperately needs some extra hands. Hugo is thrilled, shouting his thanks and promising to do literally anything. But Lucian cuts him off. Wouldn't being a simple dog be incredibly boring? He really does not look like a guy who is happy just playing fetch. Lucian grabs his hands, says his name, and drops a bomb. Does he want to become a knight? Hugo is absolutely stunned into silence. The question echoes in his mind. Does he actually want to be a knight? He used to dream about it like a madman. But reality is cruel, and eventually the harsh world had completely crushed that innocent fantasy. No matter how hard he trained or risked his neck, he was always just going to be a disposable tool for the snobby nobles. His lowly peasant status was a permanent brand no matter what he did. So, did he still want that knighthood? Collapsing back to the floor, he realizes he would sell his own soul for this chance. Trembling, he asks if it is actually possible. Lucian swears on the Valdec family name. If Hugo has the dignity to stand proud, his lowly background will not hold him back at all. So wouldn't he rather live as a real human being instead of a cheap tool? Hugo looks up, pure hope in his eyes. Cut to a few days later, the mansion servants are lined up for a massive announcement. Lucian steps up, introducing their brand new hire, a highly talented fighter from the outside. Hugo confidently steps forward. He states his name and declares that starting today, his life belongs to the young master. You and I both feel that awkward silence, right? Nobody claps, but Lucian just keeps on smiling. He starts clapping himself, announcing that with introductions out of the way, they need to fetch the head maid immediately. A cheeky servant questions the order. Why call her Lucian? Fires right back. Why do you think? The head maid needs to properly greet them. They definitely do not want another scolding, like last time, do they? They claim the head maid is too busy. Internally, Lucian smirks. These fools are acting exactly as he predicted. Playing nice with this disrespectful staff is no longer an option. That much is painfully obvious to anyone watching. To them, the young master is just a weak, rotten rope. Well, time to violently hammer some respect into their thick skulls. One servant actually steps up, telling the young master to be more understanding. He claims Lord Geordie favors the head maid, so they have absolute zero authority here. The others immediately chime in loudly, whining that Lucian needs to back off. Why is he trying to start drama? They just want to chill and live peacefully, exactly like before. That is when Hans absolutely loses it, screaming at the staff to get their act together. Did they forget their damn jobs? The true master of this estate is Lucian, not the second master. Hugo steps in, telling Hans to chill. Using polite words on these garbage servants is way too much of an honor. Giving a deep bow, he tells Lucian he completely understands his first assignment. Beating some hard loyalty into these arrogant freaks who completely forgot their place would be incredibly easy. He just formally asks for permission to get violent. Trust me, you are going to love this part. Lucian chuckles, admitting Hugo is perfectly resourceful, and this face-slapping is exactly why he hired him. Stick with me, we're about to watch some absolute trash get wrecked. Hugo's addiction was just starting. Any later, and saving him, would be impossible. He grabbed his shoulder. Permission granted. That was the exact moment Hugo had been waiting for. No need to worry. He was about to put on a legendary show. Hugo nodded, ready to follow his orders. The servant stared in total confusion as Hugo marched right up to him. He just couldn't process how a human could be this massive. Up close, even more gigantic. And why did he look so terrifying? Wasn't this guy just some random backstreet thug? The servant whispered a threat. Claimed he was sticking his nose where it didn't belong, completely clueless about the local hierarchy. He better pick the winning side. Did he have any idea how ruthless Lord Geordie was? The odds were totally in his favor. Who would be stupid enough to risk their neck for pocket change, right? Hugo just clenched his fist. What pathetic final words. The servant blinked, completely confused. What was that supposed to mean? Bam. Before he could finish, Hugo buried a massive punch right in his face, sending him crashing down. The rest of the servants froze in absolute horror as the guy went flying across the room. Even Hans was caught off guard, his jaw practically hitting the floor. Lucian felt invincible. Hugo simply glared down at the totally wrecked servant. Teeth completely shattered, face bruised red, and blood dripping from his mouth. Total chaos erupted. Everyone started screaming and pointing fingers at Hugo. Have they lost their minds? Why go this far? Just because the young master brought him, did he really think he was untouchable? Hugo fired back that he had every right. After all, his absolute specialty was disciplining complete morons. Watch closely, this is where the real drama starts. The room erupted again as guards dragged Jenny in by the arms while she screamed at them to let her go. Did these guys seriously think they could pull this off without consequences? They told her to shut her mouth, but she was completely clueless. Furious, Jenny snapped back. How dare they raise their voices at her? She swore they would pay. But the second she stepped into Lucian's room, her words completely died. Every single servant was already on their knees. She was stunned by their horrified faces. A servant bowed. Young Master Lucian, they had brought the head maid as ordered. Lucian stood looking out the window. Then he slowly turned, smiled, and asked, "Are they finally here?" He only asked for her to be brought in, but clearly his men had gotten a little too excited. Jenny started screaming. What did this mean? Did he honestly think he could get away with this? Trying to intimidate her, huge mistake. There was absolutely no way Master Geordie would let this slide. Back down now, and she would let it go. Lucian just laughed. Who on earth said they were finished? He grabbed his whip. This was just the beginning. The maid could run her mouth all she wanted because she was going to die right here. He approached her wearing an absolutely terrifying expression. You and I both know how this works. A brutal execution has always been the ultimate warning. The logic was brutal but clear. It burns a permanent message into everyone's brains. Honestly, it was the perfect shortcut to assert dominance without replacing every single servant. Looking down at Jenny, he decided today was the day he would send a message to the Duke. The pathetic, weak little third son they all mocked was officially dead. With a quick gesture, a guard stepped up, grabbing Jenny by the shoulders and forcefully slamming her down to her knees. She warned the young master to think about this very carefully. He stated he would kill her. She fired back that if he laid even a single scratch on her, Master Geordie would destroy him. Her mother was Geordie's nanny. They practically grew up together like real brother and sister. Hearing this, Lucian just stood there in complete heavy silence. Then he finally broke the quiet. Was that her grand finale? Because wasting her pathetic last words repeating the exact same threat was just sad. Calling him brother until death, embarrassing. If she had any trump cards left, she should play them now. She choked out his name, suddenly realizing she was completely out of options. Lucian coldly pointed out her delusion. He had plenty of reasons to execute her. Insulting a noble total negligence, inciting rebellion, and massive embezzlement. She completely forgot her actual place in the hierarchy simply because she was raised by a noble's nanny. What did she honestly expect her precious Geordie to do? Hit him twice and then magically calm down? If the Duke stepped in, Geordie couldn't do anything. Honestly, his father might actually reward Lucian for finally putting this arrogant maid in her place. Pure terror paralyzed her completely. Lucian brutally reminded her that Geordie was just an heir, exactly like the man standing right in front of her. He had given her a chance, but she alone dragged the situation to this fatal point. And here's where we leave it. Shaking uncontrollably, she finally choked out the truth she had been completely wrong. Stick with me, you're about to witness one brutal payback. He glared silently, called it bad luck, and then crack struck her with the whip. Blood hit the floor. Later that morning, Geordie was sprinting down the halls, muttering like a madman that this was totally impossible. Just a few days ago, this guy was totally spineless when Jenny humiliated him. But now he's gone full berserk mode, threatening to end her life. And it gets weirder. Knowing something like this might happen, Geordie had guards stationed at Lucian's outbuilding. Those servants were supposed to stop him. So if it reached this point, it meant Lucian had completely overpowered the guards. Arriving at the room, the panicked guards begged Geordie to calm down, claiming the report was flawed. A bystander swore it was true, insisting that the old Lucian would never dare touch anyone. Plus, he was terrified of Lord Geordie. Geordie sensed something totally shady right as a blood-curdling scream echoed. Bursting through the doors, he was met with the sight of a bloody whip across Jenny's back. Hugo pinned her shoulders down while Lucian delivered another strike. Geordie ground his teeth, furiously demanding an explanation. Lucian just casually turned around. He told him to excuse the mess he was busy working and suggested he come back later. Today, he was ripping this rot out by the roots. He ordered Hugo to lift her, and the knight immediately complied. In that exact moment, Geordie screamed for Oliver and Bert to snatch Jenny away from him. They shouted yes and charged forward. But Lucian calmly told Hugo that if anyone took 3 steps closer, he should instantly slit their throats. Now, watch closely, everyone in that room was left completely speechless. Hugo grinned, warning them she'd never leave alive, so they better just relax. He pressed a blade to her neck, drawing fresh blood. Trembling, Jenny begged for help and Geordie screamed at him to drop the dagger. If they didn't back down right now, he promised to sever their heads and string them up on the palace walls. Hugo just smirked, saying that was impossible since his only master was Lord Lucian. He had absolutely zero reason to listen to a stranger, no matter the consequences. His only duty was executing his master's exact orders. Shaking with pure rage, Geordie clenched his fists, demanding to know what she did to deserve such cruelty. Lucian coldly listed her crimes, insults, disobedience, lies. He was simply serving justice. He advised his brother to stop mixing personal feelings with official family business. That comment made Geordie see red. Back in the Valdec estate, the first and second young masters were locked in a brutal succession war. Basically, until the final showdown, Geordie absolutely had to secure his own power base at all costs. But Lucian's recent public slap to his face cost Geordie massive influence, losing him his best knight Hendrik. If he couldn't even protect his right-hand woman Jenny, it would spark massive doubt and betrayal among his own loyal followers. You and I both know that's a checkmate. Admitting defeat, Geordie demanded he let her go. The entire room turned to look at him in absolute shock, even Hans. Jenny burst into tears while Lucian just stood in silence, thinking this was pathetic. Did he really think one word fixed this, stealing someone's precious assets, then talking his way out like his words were gold? These nobles were truly bizarre. Playing dumb, Lucian asked what on earth his brother meant. He was just doing his job as the third master. Embezzlement is a massive crime no matter your rank. If they just swept this under the rug, the public backlash would be insane. He claimed that since his esteemed brother asked nicely, he wanted to ignore it, but simply lacked the legal authority. Trembling with fury, Geordie snapped at him to cut the garbage and name his actual price. Lucian smirked, noting that thieves who touched another's property historically paid back 10 times the stolen amount. So he asked what price did he mean. Fast forward to a brand new day, and Sigmund stood at his window looking deep in thought. Remembering the resolved chaos, he asked the head butler if the rumors were true. The butler nodded, confirming Geordie actually paid young Master Lucian 10 times the stolen cash. Plus, Lucian hired a brutal mercenary named Hugo to plant spies everywhere. Now Lucian's territory is locked down tighter than any other place in the estate. We just witnessed an epic comeback, right? He let his son inside. Alright, stick with me here. Lucian walks in, hand on his heart, waiting for his dad to answer. Sigmund just turns. Total silence. He notices his son's eyes completely different now. Brought up the recent chaos, Lucian plays it cool, nothing big, just disciplined a servant who conveniently forgot who her real master was. But Sigmund points out the obvious: he absolutely humiliated his older brother. And that guy? He holds a grudge. Ready for the fallout, Lucian basically shrugs. What fallout? There's nothing to handle. He was just fixing the hierarchy. If he backed down from his duty just because he was scared, he wouldn't deserve the Valdec name. He just made a move to protect their family pride. Simple. His dad leans in. If Geordie keeps pushing his buttons, he has full permission to hit back. But, and it's a big but, if this petty war hurts the family, dad's backing, Geordie. Right or wrong doesn't matter. Lucian genuinely blinks. Wait, what does that even mean? What is he saying? His dad just stares right back. Why act so totally shocked? Geordie might have been overseas, but he actually put in serious work for this family. Unlike Lucian, who basically did nothing for a year. The family head picking the guy who actually brings in results. That is just cold, hard logic. Here's the part you and I need to watch carefully. Lucian realizes this is basically an order to completely crush his brother. His old man tells it straight: get stronger. Make yourself actually useful to this household. Do that, and the answer to his question becomes obvious. Lucian gets it. Dad's turning up the heat to motivate him, and dropping hints this heavy. The battle for the heir seat is officially starting real soon. That's exactly why he wants him to move fast, grab the chance, and not blow it. Is every noble dad this intense? Well, since the old man cares so much, he might as well start right now. Right then, he pulls something from his pocket. He looks at his dad and drops a bomb. What if he already made his first move? He casually slides over some papers, adding that it is a massive play, honestly. He's loving this. His dad scans the documents, literally crumples the edges in anger, and demands to know, is this report 100% real? If he faked this just to look good, he better confess right now. But Lucian, cool as ice. It is absolute undeniable fact. Even better, he already bagged a traitor pushing shady goods under House Lograin's direct orders. He can see the hard proof right now. Boom. An insane magical pressure explodes from his dad. He roars that this shameless son of a Marquis Bernhard actually dared to mess with Valdec territory. You and I both feel that crazy tension, right? This guy isn't just dad, he's the Empire's ultimate sword. Would this pressure literally kill him? Breathing heavy, he asks his dad for permission to speak. The old man barks back, what now? Lucian smoothly explains that running to the Emperor won't work. House Lograin will easily slither away without a single scratch. They use fake merchant guilds for their dirty work. Technically, their hands look completely spotless. Plus, if they push harder, the Emperor hates civil war. He's absolutely going to force a compromise. Sigmund stares completely baffled. Since when did this kid understand high-level politics? Lucian breaks it down. Even after insulting House Valdec, like this, the enemies would just lose some pocket change. Nothing serious. Shouldn't they rip something much bigger from them as payback? A heavy silence drops between them. Then his dad slowly sits back down and demands to hear the full master plan. A smirk. It's a trap with 0 escape routes, and honestly, he already set the whole thing up in advance. Just recently, a guy from the enemy's inner circle completely folded and surrendered. No noble title, but he earned their absolute trust and became a steward. His dad instantly connects the dots. The guy was a planted spy. Did his third son actually predict all of this? Sigmund is genuinely stunned. Is he using the traitor to trigger a massive counter-trap? Lucian nods with a smirk. Exactly. They'd never expect a brutal backstab from the exact same steward who physically manages their supplies. He manipulated the entire board so they think they are winning big time. Soon enough, a top Lograin VIP will be forced to step right out into the light. Now that is a huge cocky claim. But wait, this plan has a massive flaw. Sigmund points it out. He bet the entire game on one shady traitor from the slums. You just cannot rewrite human nature. You can't rely on someone you don't trust. But Lucian just flashes this wicked grin. He doesn't trust the guy, he trusts his pure greed. His dad is completely thrown off what Lucian explains. The traitor wants to be a legendary knight, spread his name, and make absolute history. A peasant forgetting his place, sure, but as Lucian says, madness makes people totally predictable. So what do you and I think? Is this absolute genius, or just completely crazy? Stick with me. In his past life, he actually believed this. His father called it sentimental nonsense. But what happens if he completely ruins everything now? Lucian didn't flinch. If things go south, he won't run. A subordinate's mistake falls on the master. He'd pay whatever price it took, even putting his own neck on the chopping block. Sigmund just listened calmly. His orders hit the training grounds the second he is totally healed up. Lucian was stunned. The meaning, his father's passing down the Lionheart sword. He is officially a candidate for family head. Night falls. A servant approaches Sigmund in his study, bowing low and expressing absolute deep shame. Right here, deep in Valdec territory, he actually let a massive breach like this happen. Sigmund cuts him off. He assigned him to the borders, knowing full well the guy was barely keeping his head above water. It was pure luck, Lucian found out first. Bernhard tried incredibly hard to stay completely under the radar. The guy wasn't after cash or power, my lord. It was all about his honor. Sigmund nodded. Bernhard was definitely planning to use this later, for some shady royal politics. How could the Marquis only protect his own neck, knowing how messed up the Empire is? Now pay attention here. What kind of absolute beast did his third son just recruit? On paper, a thuggish mountain cabin manager. But reality, he ran a black market ring that scared the criminal underworld. Hugo isn't the type to serve anybody. Yet Lucian tracked him down and made him yield. The kid leveled up fast. Sigmund pondered Hugo's brutal rise through the dark underworld ranks. If Hugo fell for fake promises and pipe dreams, he would have been crushed years ago. He clearly saw something in Lucian. The raw potential of a master worth dying for. This was happening way ahead of schedule. But Lucian proved his worth, and Sigmund was ready to guide him. Secret family techniques start tomorrow. The servant bowed, totally agreeing with this massive power upgrade. Did he have an instructor in mind? Sigmund planned to pull Sir Eisen into this. The servant gasped. Sigmund sighed. Yeah, it was rough bothering the old man in his retirement, but the old knight wouldn't regret it. Soon enough, crazy rumors started flying around the entire palace. You and I both know Hans is losing his mind right now. Official heir. He thinks it is a prank. Lucian just smirked. How many times does he have to repeat it before it clicks? He whispered to Hugo to handle the guy. Hugo literally lifted Hans up, telling him to chill. With the young master's insane talent totally expected. Plus, a proper right-hand man shouldn't be trembling like a leaf. Hans froze. Right-hand man. His eyes sparkled, bursting into happy tears, totally overwhelmed by the crazy title. Sure, he had served Lucian the longest, but he knew he was completely out of his depth. Competing with such insane talent felt impossible. Hugo just laughed, saying he was humble as always, exactly what you'd expect from Elder Hans. Lucian cut in, telling them to wrap it up. Watching them, he realized veteran mercenaries just hit differently. Right then, he looked straight at Hans. Hugo was dead right. He gave them the inside scoop before the official announcement. Looking at Hans, he knew the guy was super timid. That soft heart could be a fatal flaw. But his loyalty, unbreakable. He stood by Lucian through absolute hell. So, if he leveled up his management skills, he would become the ultimate support character anyone could ask for. And Hugo's skills. Beyond questioning, Lucian just needed to pave the man's path straight to knighthood. That is how his true potential unlocks. He would transform into his most loyal knight, an absolute weapon. Forget quantity. Quality is everything right now. He just needed to train them like crazy. Our main character grinned. From this exact second, the real brutal grind begins. He couldn't walk this crazy path alone. He absolutely needed his boys to survive. Hugo swore his total loyalty. Hans echoed it, ready for anything. Fast forward and morning sunlight floods the palace. Lucian stood dead center in his room. In his past life, he hunted across every single continent, looking for just one prize. The core of ancient martial arts designed to push swordsmanship completely beyond limits. The absolute peak of sword mastery. But after all his suffering, trust me, you and I are about to see something wild. Listen up, you and I are about to watch our guy get handed the absolute worst luck. No ultimate skills, not even average knight techniques. They were just sad, basic beginner moves. The real high-level techniques locked away for the snobby nobles. And for a regular mercenary like him, getting even a tiny glimpse of that knowledge was basically impossible. Meanwhile, completely talentless jerks mastered top-tier moves and crushed him with pure force. Every single time he failed to protect his friends because he lacked power, he burned with a crazy desire for real swordsmanship. But now, the ultimate plot twist. He finally got his hands on a secret technique meant only for the heirs of House Valdec. An ancient style that absolutely trashes other high-level arts. The legendary Lionheart technique. This is completely insane. He was totally freaking out, and training had not even started yet. Class was still hours away, but he was so anxious he had been sitting there since the sun came up. He really needed to chill out. Back in his past life, he had zero formal training, just stealing moves and scraping by through bloodshed. He never had a real master before. This second chance was a massive upgrade. He just smiled happily. Flocks of birds flew past the window. Standing far away, Eisen watched him and realized the kid had not moved an inch. So what caused this massive change in him? Stick with me, we are about to find out. He remembered his chat with Sigmund, who pushed him to become Lucian's teacher. Eisen thought the kid was hopeless, but then saw something wild. It would definitely be an entertaining challenge. Eisen had joked that if the Lord insisted the kid must be a genius, Sigmund was actually shocked by his casual attitude. He told Eisen he would understand once he saw it himself. And watching the boy right now, Eisen totally got it. This guy was the holy swordsman about to train him. A holy swordsman is basically a superhuman who broke past every physical limit. It is the absolute peak title for a fighter, incredibly rare, even in the massive history of the Empire. He is practically a god holding a sword, and this walking legend was right there. The holy swordsman Eisen stepped right up to Lucian. Bowing, he casually mentioned it had been ages since the Lord's birthday party. From today, he was the master. He told the kid to just call him Eisen Breitner. Lucian suddenly remembered Hans dropping hints earlier that he would be trained by an old veteran knight of the Valdec family. But how did that guy casually leave out that he was a literal holy swordsman? Lucian bowed, deeply honored by the legend. He formally asked for guidance. Eisen just waved it off, laughing that the fancy title was completely useless for an old man. Plus, Lucian was the future boss. Bowing like that to a subordinate was totally against the rules. Lucian shot back that while family honor matters, how could he not show respect to an absolute legend? He threw rank out the window to show pure respect. You and I know that is super rare here. Eisen saw that spark in his eyes and smiled, telling him to do whatever he wanted. Lucian thanked him, and training finally started. Eisen pointed to the dirt and casually suggested a quick run around the training grounds. Our boy instantly started warming up. Eisen was totally thrown off and yelled stop. Did he not have any questions at all? Why run? For how long? What was the actual point of this basic workout? Lucian admitted he was super curious, but an order was an order. The master definitely had his reasons, even if he kept them completely secret right now. A real student just shuts up and follows the teacher. Eisen was impressed. His eyes were different from those spoiled noble kids. This boy was hungry for the sword. Eisen smirked and announced the official start. The second the word dropped, Lucian blasted into the arena. He sprinted lap after lap, pushing his absolute physical limits. Honestly, he had a secret reason for playing the obedient student. He already figured out this classic anime test. This was a test of character. The master was secretly judging his raw, hidden potential. He used the exact same trick back in his mercenary days. Hand a rookie a boring, tough task, and their reaction tells you everything you need to know. He smirked at Eisen, knowing he passed the attitude check. Now he just had to prove his insane endurance. He planned to run until he blacked out. But an hour later, he stared at his trembling hands, totally confused. What the heck was happening? He had been sprinting like a total maniac, but he did not feel tired in the slightest. Actually, he felt lighter. So what do you and I make of this? A cheap potion broke the system, and his only real workout had been walking. How is this even possible? Stick with me here. Lucian just kept running effortlessly. A dumbfounded Eisen realized he only ordered this run to check his baseline, expecting zero actual physical stamina. But this completely broke all logic. Not a single drop of sweat, and his breathing was smooth as glass. Even a veteran master who spent decades gathering mana would totally struggle with this. Was he really seeing what he thought he was seeing? Still wrapping his head around it, Eisen yelled, "Stop, that was enough cardio for today." Lucian just blinked and asked, "Wait, what's wrong?" He noticed Eisen actively using mana. The old guy looked serious. "Third master, let me ask you something. How exactly did you calm your body this morning? Wasn't that mana circulation an incredibly difficult technique?" Lucian casually replied that if he meant the training hall incident, then yeah, he was spot on. He used circulation because it was the absolute best way to clear his head. Eisen realized how wrong he was and asked permission to check something. He told Lucian to stay still no matter how weird it felt. He grabbed Lucian's hand, pushing his own magical energy into the kid's palm to investigate, and then he just completely froze. He had his suspicions, but Lucian had already hit the absolute ceiling of mana circulation. Now pay attention, this is crazy. For Lucian, this wasn't a limit. He blew past Eisen's peak. This kid was forging a totally new path. After a long pause, Eisen dropped his hand. "How long has this been going on? When did you actually finish forming those mana circles?" Lucian played dumb, asking what he meant. Eisen just muttered that he was checking his internal condition. The flow was flawless. His mana channels were literally shaped to maximize energy efficiency, spinning perfectly like a water wheel. This was a god-tier level. Something only a tiny handful of masters could achieve after dedicating their entire lives to brutal training. Lucian knew he was strong, but reaching this near-perfect state meant one thing: the time for hiding his true power was officially over. Honestly, he had tons of questions about his own body too. And if a literal sword saint couldn't answer them, absolutely nobody else could. Answering the old man, Lucian casually dropped a bomb. It had only been a month since he started, and his mana channels were wide open from day one. He knew mana circulation was supposed to be agonizingly painful from the strain, but he hadn't felt even a tiny bit of discomfort. Aizen realized this kid completely shattered every single expectation. It took Aizen decades of blood and sweat to reach this point. Those legendary ancients who could split mountains and oceans, maybe they actually existed. Looking right at the third son, Aizen decided to speak his mind even if it sounded incredibly disrespectful. "You saw this coming, right?" Aizen asked him to abandon his heir status. Our guy was completely blindsided, shouting, "Wait, what are you saying? Why on earth would he throw away his right to the Valdec family? Did he find some horrible defect in his body? Was his swordsmanship doomed? Or would something absolutely disastrous happen if he channeled too much mana?" Aizen shook his head. It was the exact opposite. His body was entirely perfect. He could push his mana and physical limits to the absolute max and still go beyond that. Basically, if he dedicated himself entirely to the blade, becoming the next sword saint would be a total walk in the park. Lucian realized his path to becoming a sword saint was basically guaranteed. Aizen always knew Lucian was special, but this level of talent was unreal. By pure luck, Lucian picked up the ancient Lionheart style. He truly believed he had finally unlocked the ultimate path he spent his entire past life desperately trying to reach. But even he didn't expect to get a glimpse this deep into the absolute peak of apex swordsmanship. But sadly, he can't do both. Lucian pointed out that Aizen made him choose because walking the path of a sword saint while running a noble family at the same time is impossible. Aizen nodded heavily. It was true. But the harsher reality was that his time was running out. Thanks to insane mana circulation, he can still fight like a beast at nearly 100 years old. But he can't hide the fact that his body is rapidly breaking down. If he wants to pass down his entire legacy before losing his sword saint edge, the training schedule will be brutal, even if Lucian gives up everything else. If memory serves, the legendary sword saint will be dead in 8 years. Time really is running out. He wanted to accept the offer and dedicate everything to the blade, but this world is about to face massive, chaotic wars. Only the survivors of that chaos would hold true power, a moment he'd been waiting for. So he respectfully asked for forgiveness. He told the old master that he intended to stay a Valdec family member until the bitter end. Aizen had given him an unbelievable offer, and Lucian genuinely regretted that he had to turn it down. Aizen sighed, admitting he should be totally ashamed for putting the third son in such an awkward spot. Why had he become so ridiculously greedy in his old age? Deep down, the old man just desperately wanted to leave his legacy behind through this genius kid. Watching him walk away, Lucian suddenly dropped a hint. What if there was another insanely talented person out there? So what do you and I make of this? Sometime later, another young master arrived at the farm where his servant confirmed the crazy rumors about the third son. Joshua yanked his horse to a halt. Wait a second. Were those crazy rumors actually true? This absolute loser was seriously made the new heir. Joshua hopped off his horse in disbelief. And trust me, you and I would be shocked too. The Archduke really just put his useless third son in the succession line. Even worse, he was now under the master's protection, officially learning how to use a sword. Joshua was furious. This kid was a massive pain. Surviving his 2 older brothers was already a nightmare, and now the neutral nobles suddenly had another option to rally behind. He slammed the cloth onto the floor and completely lost it. Why couldn't that little rat just sit quietly in the corner of his room? A servant nervously tried to calm him down, begging him to watch his mouth. But Joshua just screamed louder. Calm down. How could anyone stay calm right now? What if his carefully gathered supporters started switching sides? His blood boiled just thinking about calling Lucian, a guy barely months older than him, his equal brother. He absolutely refused to just sit around. He needed a solid plan. He glared at the butler. Since Lucian was playing swordsman now, he was obviously going to need a sparring partner, right? Get 2 sharp blades ready. The butler totally froze in panic, but Joshua coldly doubled down. No wooden practice sticks today. They were using real deadly combat steel. Now pay attention here. He just wanted to teach him a brutal lesson and prove nothing changed. Meanwhile, Lucian casually asked his master, what if we found another candidate? Sure, tracking him down might take a while, but this guy would make up for lost time and carry the Holy Family's glory for the next 100 years. He was talking about an absolute once-in-a-lifetime talent. Aizen just smiled back. He joked that he felt bad for wasting his precious time on the third young master, but he appreciated the kid caring about an old man. Seriously, tell him to drop the worrying. Those nice words were more than enough. Lucian figured he probably sounded completely crazy. Not even famous swordsmen could catch this master's eye. So obviously the big claims of a total rookie picking up a sword for the very first time sounded completely ridiculous. But whatever time to see if this new body had the talent to impress the legendary sword saint. Somewhere out there was a true sword genius. In his past life, he had a super weak body and only knew the most basic primitive fighting moves. But that guy, he was a living weapon, grabbing anything on the battlefield and dominating purely on raw talent. He was thinking of Felix the Sword Demon, his absolute strongest loyalist and the one destined to inherit all of the master's legendary skills. Right then, Eisen decided to run a quick baseline test before kicking off the real training. He wanted him to hit the training dummy, vertical, horizontal, then diagonal, strictly in that order. And since he already knew how to circulate energy, he should handle mana fine. Time to show off a real mana sword strike. Let's pause for a second. This is officially his very first time holding a sword in this body. He needed to adjust to his current physical stats, especially since people claimed the original Lucian actually knew some decent fencing. Getting serious, he locked in. Vertical slash, then horizontal, a quick diagonal cut, and finally igniting the mana blade. His eyes literally flared with magical energy as he launched himself at the dummy, absolutely smashing it to pieces. A huge cloud of dust kicked up across the arena. Lucian realized his own movements had become a total blur. Not bad for a first try in a new vessel, right? Classic beginner stuff, but solid. He wondered if the master was hyped to see more. Eisen stared in dead silence. I expected something like this. The third young master had totally shocked him again. Honestly, it was complete garbage. Lucian blinked, asking what the heck he meant. Eisen didn't sugarcoat it. Exactly what I said. Somehow the kid had a mountain of awful habits. He completely threw out the basics, wildly swinging his blade like a desperate street-level mercenary trying to survive. He was obsessed with raw power and speed, totally ruining the balance between his muscles and mana. That heavy hit made his form sloppy, just dragging the blade through. And that final finisher, how long did it actually take him to pump mana into the sword? Lucian awkwardly guessed, maybe 1 or 2 seconds. Eisen scoffed. That tiny little delay you just casually brushed off. Suddenly, a razor-sharp blade was pressed right against Lucian's throat. Eisen whispered that delay is plenty of time to chop off your head. He needed to respect the timing of a fight because a real enemy would never let a massive opening like that slide. Lucian froze. He didn't even feel the steel hit his skin. What an absolute clown he was. He would have died without realizing his head was gone, yet he was busy feeling proud of himself. Eisen smirked coldly. Listen, third young master. A gifted physical body doesn't magically make you an unstoppable fighter. So what do we learn here? Brute force alone never beats a true master. Alright, stick with me here. If a body cannot handle the raw mana flow, it just dies. To unlock a sword's true power, your inner and outer energy must perfectly fuse. True masters are forged in this exact harmony. He instantly executed a flawless strike right into the dummy, declaring, "This is the path you must take, third young master." A few days pass, and our boy keeps clashing with Eisen. The old man demands that his mana flow never breaks. Physical training sharpens your movement, but mastering mana control is just as vital. Channeling mana properly strengthens the entire body, keeping the circulation flowing so you can strike at the exact right time and place. Lucian kept pushing himself, but nothing was clicking. Eisen explained that until these elements finally balance out, he will never understand true swordsmanship. Suddenly, Lucian gets sent flying backward, landing on his feet totally frustrated, while Eisen calmly watches him struggle. Now pay close attention. Eisen tells him to apply everything and defend himself. But this time, the rules just changed. He has to read his opponent's speed and counter with the exact perfect amount of force. Eisen swings his blade and Lucian finally gets it. The technique must flow naturally, exactly like water. That is how you close a massive power gap and deal huge damage with zero extra effort. No hesitation. Pushed to his limit, he grits his teeth, swings his sword hard and strikes back. The weapons clash. Eisen flashes with a bright green mana, completely overpowering Lucian's blue aura. Suddenly, Eisen calls it a day, telling his student to memorize the exact feeling of that exchange. Mastering that alone makes you a top-tier swordsman. Thrilled it was over, Lucian collapses straight into the dirt. He weakly looks up, thanking his master for the lesson. After they finish, the staff sweeps the wrecked arena. Watching this brutal training, they wonder if the young master will survive. Meanwhile, our main character feels absolutely wrecked, amazed he even made it out alive today. His hands are violently shaking. He realizes this brutal beatdown is the only way to crush his terrible past life habits. There is literally no other way to fix his broken foundation. But he is learning fast. The more he watches, the more his admiration grows. The master engineers perfectly dangerous situations to force the right reaction out of him. Definitely easier said than actually done. You cannot fix someone's core without perfectly understanding every single limit of their physical body. He fully trusts the old man's guidance, already feeling the massive improvements. Before he thought ultimate power only came from hidden sword arts. He never even cared about wrist balance or mana flow until right now, even though the real potential was always hiding inside him. You and I both know the truth. If he had this knowledge before he could have slaughtered the man who betrayed him, he smirks, charging forward in his mind. He clashes again, wondering how many real hits he could actually survive now. Honestly, it feels like a total waste to stop. He just needs a proper sparring partner. Right on cue, a group walks over. He squints, wondering if it is really him. The guy grew up, looking healthy. Joshua steps right up to Aizen, eyeing the student. Aizen bows slightly. Welcome, fourth young master. To what does he owe this totally random visit? He is busy training the third young master right now, so please come back later. But Joshua just smiles. No need, master. Aizen figures out what he really wants, and before he even finishes speaking, Joshua confirms his suspicion. Since his big brother finally left isolation to train the younger, way more experienced sibling, decided he simply had to help. How about it, brother Lucian? He reaches out his hand, offering his so-called assistance. Lucian is internally thrilled. His absolute perfect punching bag just walked right into the trap. Joshua claims he wants to help the third young master train. He suggests a friendly sparring match to test his new mana control practically. He insists on being his opponent, claiming they just do not get enough quality time to bond as loving brothers anymore. If they skip this, who knows when they will bond again. So risking looking a bit rude, he stepped in. Our MC just smirks. These rich noble kids are way too good at manipulating things. Helping out with training and brotherly bonding. He crashed the lesson and brought a real sword to fight a rookie. Trust me, we are about to watch this backfire beautifully. Alright, stick with me. You and I are watching this kid's naive plan unfold. He clearly wants to crush him completely. Leaning on his older brother's influence makes him think everything will go smoothly. The holy swordsman watching just adds more pressure. Even this cocky young brat is trying to back our guy into a corner. He wants him to give up the succession rights. But backing down now, that would put him in an insanely terrible spot. Stepping up to his master, he confidently accepted his little brother's challenge. You gotta respect the kid's guts, right? But he absolutely couldn't just ignore that arrogant, stubborn disrespect being thrown in his face. Time to personally teach this immature brat a hard lesson. Joshua smirked in pure annoyance while our MC declared playtime was officially over for him. No more embarrassing the master. Meanwhile, Aizen totally figured out what the fourth young master was plotting. He pushed forward anyway. Looks like a little bloodshed is completely unavoidable now. He gave a nod, granting them permission since they both wanted it. But he made it crystal clear this was their final spar, and he'd stop it if things got too lethal. Both of them confidently agreed to follow his strict rules. Lucian literally patted his little brother's head, challenging him to a good match. Joshua just scowled and agreed. Now pay attention, this is where it gets good. They step into the arena, and Aizen warns them to keep it clean, just a test of skill. Since the third young master had never fought, he was told to take a beginner's stance, and the fourth young master was expected to act like a responsible senior swordsman. He told them not to drag the proud Valdec family name through the mud today. Once they were fully ready, drawing their swords would officially kick off the match. Blades out. Joshua glared at Lucian, totally annoyed, wondering why this guy was suddenly acting like a superior and throwing around the word junior. Sure, he was born earlier, but his attitude was super annoying. Joshua wanted to see if he'd still be talking trash when the dust settled. In this family hierarchy, age means nothing. He's about to brutally learn who is actually in charge. Our MC just laughed internally at his furious face. You wouldn't even glare at your worst enemy like that. Gripping the sword, he felt that familiar heavy balance. It had already been 2 long months. Back in his past life, he'd used the dirtiest tricks imaginable to win. But today, he's acting as the honorable third master. If he accidentally unleashed his past life techniques, his master would catch on instantly. Besides, his opponent was just an arrogant kid who hadn't experienced the real world. He's playing the role of big brother now, so he'd hold back within reason. Joshua smirked and mocked him for looking around cautiously. Where did all that big talk go? Did holding a real blade finally scare him? He told him not to sweat it, even though tragic accidents always happen with live steel. But that only happens when fighters are actually matched. If he's terrified, he can grab a wooden toy. Lucian just smirked. Yeah, scratch that whole idea about holding back and acting reasonable. Sometimes a solid beating is the best medicine for a bratty younger brother. He sarcastically suggested it was best if he didn't want to get hurt. You and I knew that Junior comment would set him off right. He completely snapped, charging in to make him swallow those words. Getting into stance, our MC realized teaching this kid a lesson while suppressing his own insane power wouldn't be easy. Joshua had also trained under the Holy Master. His basics and footwork were definitely not something you could just brush off. Plus, our guy had basically drained his entire mana pool during his last training session. But real combat experience, you can't fake that. The kid fell for the cheapest taunts imaginable. Remembering his master's exact instructions, he focused his remaining energy-packing insane mana directly into his legs. Pushing off with explosive force, he rushed in to steal the momentum. In less than a second, his blade was raised high for the strike. The master and the crowd froze in pure panic, while Lucian calmly told his little brother to grit his teeth and block, or else he'd lose his tongue. Boom. The impact echoed like a bomb, kicking up a massive dust cloud. Joshua barely managed to block the heavy strike, struggling hard, and our MC coldly reminded him that a true man never shows an ounce of weakness. Realizing he had been forced down onto one knee, Joshua completely lost his mind, tossing his guard aside and screaming at him to shut up. Jumping back to create some distance, the brat desperately claimed that one hit was pure luck. He swore the next exchange wouldn't go the same way. He swings wildly. Lucian just steps back. Joshua charges again, striking hard. And that's where we pause. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Let us dive in. Lucian blocks the strike, meeting that cocky, childish stare before knocking his blade aside. And just like that, the clash begins. Watching the chaos, the butler turns to the holy swordsman, nervously pointing out that this spar is getting way too aggressive. He begs to stop the fight. Young Master Joshua absolutely despises Master Lucian, constantly going out of his way to torment him at every chance. Being nearly the exact same age, they are constantly compared. Naturally, Joshua's bitter hatred has only grown stronger over time. When Lucian is involved, Joshua absolutely refuses to listen to reason. If this intense clash continues, a total disaster is bound to happen. The swordsman waves off the concern. Sure, Joshua has a fiery temper, but he is certainly not stupid enough to forget his own standing. Right now, he is just acting like a brat. Honestly, they should expect the exact opposite outcome. The butler gasps, asking what he means by that. But Eisen completely ignores the question, staying totally silent. Watching them clash, the butler thinks that given the massive gap in their actual skill levels, that outcome makes zero logical sense. The third master was born with terrifying potential, but he heavily lacks the real combat experience needed to actually awaken it. Meanwhile, the fourth master has pretty average talent, yet thanks to his insane daily grind, he has already achieved some incredible results. Watch closely here. Even without relying on fancy sword techniques, the massive gap in their raw skill cannot be fixed by blind luck. But Joshua, completely failing to control his raging temper, is literally throwing away his own natural advantage right now. Meanwhile, Lucian just calmly waits for the perfect opening. Staying that ice cold while facing a deadly blade requires completely conquering your own fear. Seeing Lucian act like this means one of two things. Either he is just too green to be scared, or he possesses the chilling aura of someone who has stared death in the face repeatedly. For some terrifying reason, the second option feels way more accurate. Sparks fly as they relentlessly parry blow after blow. Joshua screams out, asking where all his fake confidence went. He arrogantly shouts that Lucian should have surrendered immediately. He mocks that it is not too late to drop the sword and beg. Lucian easily blocks the heavy strike, realizing this kid has lost his mind. But honestly, it makes sense. In Joshua's twisted head, he actually believes he is crushing his older brother right now. Lucian's body vibrates from the heavy impacts. Originally, his plan was to end this entire annoying spar with just one clean strike, because nobody is easier to beat than a fool blinded by rage. But our main character miscalculated one tiny detail. Joshua is actually way stronger than expected, meaning Lucian simply lacks the mana reserves to knock him out instantly. Right now, he barely has enough mana left to reinforce his own muscles. Since that is the reality, he has to risk everything on a single decisive counterattack. He parries another frantic swing. Joshua suddenly realizes his opponent's sword feels incredibly heavy. Does Lucian seriously have hidden strength left? But seeing him gasping for air, Joshua arrogantly brushes the thought aside. Looking at his exhausted state, there is no way he has power remaining. This must be a desperate final struggle. Smirking like a maniac, Joshua lunges forward, absolutely confident that he is about to end this duel right here. You saw that coming, right? A brutal counter. This was exactly the opening Lucian wanted. The heavy blade smashes into the floor, completely missing Lucian. Joshua freezes in shock, wondering how he perfectly dodged a full-power strike. If it was just a simple dodge, he would understand. But wait, Lucian is smiling. A chilling realization hits him. Was this trap planned from the very beginning? Lucian's cold voice echoes, making the kid violently flinch. He casually points out that Joshua dumped every drop of power into that reckless swing right. The fake exhaustion was just a brilliant bait. Lucian coldly declares that this exact foolishness is why he will forever remain just the little brother. Furious, Joshua glares up with pure venom, lunging forward while screaming at him to actually win before trying to give a lecture. But our main character effortlessly traps the blade under his boot, pinning him down. Lucian calmly replies that he was going to do exactly that anyway. Smirking down at him, he asks what Joshua thinks will happen next. Panic sets in. Joshua suddenly plays the innocent victim, desperately calling him brother. But Lucian swings his wooden sword down. Oh, so now they are brothers. After delivering a thoroughly painful lesson, the shocking news of their lopsided duel spreads like absolute wildfire throughout the entire estate. Every single servant is completely buzzing about Lucian's epic win, while secretly laughing at Joshua. I mean, he marched in acting like a god and returned looking like a beaten dog. Word on the street is he was even sobbing. Of course, the real reason these juicy rumors spread so insanely fast was because Hugo and Hans were actively hyping up the drama everywhere. The second the maids spotted those two, they practically begged for every single spicy detail of that brutal beatdown. Everyone is dying to know if Lucian really earned the Holy Swordsman's respect. Almost nobody realizes that this entire theatrical display was perfectly orchestrated by one guy. Our guy is in a fantastic mood, thinking today is just the perfect weather for letting rumors fly. His little brother got incredibly lucky. Trust me on this, the moment he begged and called him brother, his painful fate was sealed. Wild ride right. Alright, let's dive right into this. Joshua screamed in absolute panic, but Lucian just smashed his sword clean in half. He calmly warned him, pull a dumb stunt like that again, and playtime is officially over. He better learn his place, stay in his lane, and start behaving like a decent human being. Just nod if you understand. Joshua frantically bobbed his head, absolutely terrified. Snapping back to reality, our main character figured those annoying brothers would finally keep their mouths shut. Glancing at the secret letter on his desk, he smirked. With the internal family drama totally sorted out, it was finally time to crush House Logram. Finding his dad in the greenhouse, he handed over the letter. Sigmund raised an eyebrow. Was this the secret intel from Hugo? Lucian confirmed it. In exactly 1 week, a shady Logram representative was planning a secret meetup right in Vestra. Sigmund tapped his fingers on the table, totally baffled. The whole setup was just ridiculously absurd. Sure, that land was basically a dump now, but it was practically next door to their Kelheim. Lucian agreed. They probably thought his eyes wouldn't reach that far. Sigmund called it a classic blind spot, then asked him point blank, why bring this to him? Hadn't he handed this entire mission over to his son? Lucian bluntly replied that he needed more firepower. Look, just because a wild beast steps into a trap doesn't mean you automatically have the right weapons to kill it. His dad narrowed his eyes. So you came running to me for weapons? It sounds logical, sure, but honestly, it just looks like he is trying to piggyback off his old man's massive power instead of doing the work. Did he actually think everyone would praise him for this? A true hunter only gets the glory and respect when they personally bring down the prey themselves. Relying on others is barely half a victory. He was given the golden opportunity and total authority to handle this entire mess on his own. Now pay attention here. Is choosing safety over a real challenge actually his best move? Sigmund clenched his fist, demanding an answer. Lucian didn't flinch, stating confidently that if this guarantees a successful hunt, he'd pick this path every single time. His dad frowned deeply. He pushed forward, saying if fighting fair is the so-called royal road, only the ridiculously overpowered can actually survive it. When normal guys are shaking in a monster's shadow, acting like true bravery means charging in with just a spear. That's not courage, that's pure recklessness. Even if you somehow win, it's just mindless stupidity. Eventually, you lose everyone's trust. To him, the true core of hunting isn't about mindless killing, it's about absolute defense. If a massive threat gets permanently erased, who cares how history judges the final method? But he's not playing the innocent saint here. It's all about strategically choosing who exactly gets the final credit for the kill. If the day arrives where he can't even pull a bowstring, the next guy in line is totally doomed anyway. Sigmund paused, letting the heavy silence linger. Then his intense aura faded. That answer was more than enough. Someone talking back to him this boldly. It had been years. He totally didn't expect that kind of fire from his son, but honestly, it was a brilliant answer. Lucian mentally cheered at the rare praise, adding that a real man has to be completely unshakable in his chosen path. If a single word makes you doubt yourself, you're going nowhere. He straight up asked, was this all just a test? Sigmund nodded. He just needed to see if he would crack under the terrifying pressure of absolute authority. Let that sink in for a second. If a leader can't even stand by his own choices, why would anyone ever follow him into battle? A family head like that, utterly worthless as a man. Lucian just smirked, knowing exactly what his dad was playing at. He obviously knew this mission was way above his current limits. No wonder the old man was grilling him so hard. Man, surviving here is exhausting. Since he officially passed the vibe check, he smoothly pivoted back to the main topic. So how about that heavy backup he asked for? His dad smirked. He would give him the exact weapons needed. Sending a massive army would totally blow their cover. They needed to move as a tiny, ultra-elite hit squad to keep things completely off the radar. Lucian nodded awkwardly, chuckling as he asked if his dad could toss a few high-level knights his way. Sigmund completely cut him off. Forget basic knights, he was deploying the legendary Black Lions. Let the kid feel the crushing weight of real leadership. Fast forward 1 week. Lucian and Hugo arrived on site. He scanned the area. This city was an absolute crumbling dump, way worse than the rumors. It was basically a total ghost town with 0 civilians left. Hugo explained that despite being so near Kelheim, it was completely drained of resources. No trade meant only the absolute worst vagabonds still lurked in these shadows. Perfect spot for an ambush. But Hugo finally had to ask, how did he perfectly predict the enemy's secret moves? Even Hans was completely clueless. Lucian just flashed a confident smirk, promising to spill the big secret after the mission. Right now they needed total focus on the prey. Was the trap ready? Hugo nodded. The inside of the factory was perfectly rigged to match the fake intel. And that special item, ready to go. Now you and I just get to watch this trap snap completely shut. Alright, stick with me here. Seeing Hugo looking totally bummed out, Lucian asked if his dad's help was bothering him. Hugo instantly hyped up, saying no way. This was actually a super serious deal. He totally knew they could not afford a single mistake. Honestly, he was just feeling pathetic about his own weakness. If he were stronger, it would be his own win. Our MC just patted his shoulder, saying he totally gets it, but hey, their epic journey is only just starting. Getting impatient now would just ruin everything. Plus, the guy was only 30. His whole life was ahead. But Hugo awkwardly corrected him. He was 23. Way off 30, so their age gap was not huge. Our MC was completely stunned. A hilariously awkward silence hit them before Lucian cleared his throat, admitting he just turned 20 himself. Hugo gave a tragic little smile, begging him to stop talking. It just hurt more. Crows started circling above. Lucian glanced around, realizing that either way, 0 hour was finally approaching. Watch closely now. Where was their backup? Suddenly a creepy voice behind them sparked pure terror. Hugo spun around, drawing his blade for a deadly strike, but the guy blocked it easily, mocking him for being way too slow. He barely even counted as a warrior. Hugo was mind blown. The guy caught his blade barehanded and Hugo was completely stuck. Nobody had ever overpowered him like this before. Lucian quickly stepped in, telling him to chill. Not an enemy, but the killing intent was real. Glaring darkly, Lucian called him out as the Black Lion, demanding his actual goal. Hugo leaped back to his master's side, totally freaking out. Was this infamous legendary Black Lion seriously the backup they were waiting for? The Black Lions are a shadow squad handling all the Valdec family's absolute dirtiest work, answering straight to the head of the house. Lucian confirmed it was totally true. These hunters were sent as backup. Raymond the Black Lion commander said hi, claiming they just wanted to test his sidekick's reflexes. Zero hard feelings. Lucian recalled his past life, where he wasn't even sure these guys actually existed. The horror stories were totally real. He was on high alert, yet he never sensed them coming at all. Even now, standing face to face, their auras are hidden so flawlessly that he cannot read a single thing. Every single one is a literal monster. Smiling, he thanked his dad mentally. This backup was insanely overpowered. After that flex, they hit the inn to chat. Our MC told the squad they probably knew the mission specs already. The Logran family swallowed the bait and were marching straight here. You and I both know what this means. Capture the leader breathing, but waste the rest. They crossed the line, so absolutely zero mercy. Aside from that, the squad could go completely wild. Raymond quietly thought the Archduke just sent them to babysit the third young master. But clearly there was way more to this kid than expected. The kid stayed totally iced out during the ambush, sharply calculating their strength and gearing up for the absolute worst. Things were about to get crazy. He slammed a fist to his chest, confirming the orders, while his squad echoed the salute perfectly. Come sunset, the fancy Logran carriage finally rolled into town. The Logran young master scowled in pure disgust, complaining about how painfully boring the long ride had been. Without his dad forcing him, he would never step foot in this dump. A maid quickly handed him a fancy cloth. Stepping out, he covered his nose, planning to wrap up this messy job fast and sprint back to his cozy mansion. Just breathing the air here grossed him out. Meet Philip Logran, the famously arrogant fourth son. Suddenly, a local peasant rushed out excitedly, apologizing for his massive disrespect in not knowing a noble lord was coming to visit. Philip's knight instantly drew his blade, screaming at the guy to freeze. One more step and he was getting his head sliced off. The terrified kid froze while the knight violently demanded his name right there. Bowing intensely, he begged for mercy, claiming Boss Hugo sent him just to act as their humble tour guide. Just a nobody peasant. But wait, it was actually Lucian in disguise, totally thrilled that his trap was working perfectly. Philip told his guard to stand down. Chatting with trash like this was way beneath his noble status anyway. Walking inside, our MC heavily played the grateful peasant. Inside his head, though, he was grinning. This prey was way fatter than expected. That extreme arrogance and casually strolling into enemy turf without flinching. Yeah, this snob definitely had to be one of the Marquis's own spoiled kids. Guard count was super low too, about a dozen exactly as he predicted. Probably just Logran trainees. But that one intense bodyguard sticking to the kid like glue, Lucian definitely needed to watch him closely. But bringing maids on a hit job, trust me, we are about to see this get wild. Let's jump straight into the chaos. Philip glares, calling him a total idiot and barking orders to lead the way. Lucian runs up, playing the fool. He stammers that he is just a commoner who has never been this close to such fancy nobles, acting totally nervous and unaccustomed. Philip snaps that he is a pathetic loser. Meanwhile, Lucian spots a maid and pauses. Why does she look so incredibly familiar? A crazy thought crosses his mind, but he instantly shakes it off. No way. That is totally out of the question. She just looks like him. Our main character leads them inside the inn, and Philip immediately gags, disgusted by the horrible stench in there. He mutters about, Hugo, did that idiot really steal the family funds? Right on cue, Hugo steps out of the shadows. He smirks, saying the garbage outside is just a distraction, it is the inside that matters. Philip glares and demands to know who he is. Hugo casually introduces himself. He claims the special item took a while to prepare. Philip snorts, figuring that since he came in person, he probably is not planning any funny business. Hugo laughs out loud. Would he really risk ticking off House Logram over a few coins, especially after sending all those boring little reports? And honestly, since Philip dragged himself all the way here, he must be dying to see it. He hypes up the item, saying it could rot Kelheim to dust. Time for the reveal. Lucian smiles to himself. Hugo is putting on an absolute masterclass in lying, not even a single stutter. Philip sneers, calling him an insolent dog. He warns that if this item disappoints, Hugo is completely dead meat. Then he turns to the commoner Lucian and barks at him to go grab it. Lucian plays his part perfectly, excitedly running up to Hugo for the package. They exchange a tiny secret nod. Game on. Now watch this part closely. Lucian grabs the vial, chucks it into the air with all his strength, and shouts about a special delivery. Philip completely freaks out, screaming at him, what on earth is that idiot doing with it? Bam! A thrown knife shatters the glass, and intense, glowing magic instantly starts pouring out of the vial. The guard captain shoves Philip behind him for cover right as the magic inside violently detonates. Lucian and Hugo immediately turn away, shielding their eyes. Everyone else gets hit by a massive blinding flash that lights up the whole block. Then, pitch black. That intense light completely wiped out their vision. Philip drops to his knees in pure panic. He covers his head, screaming for his guards, getting zero response. Swearing his head off, he threatens to punish them all. Why is it so quiet? Suddenly, a voice groans. He opens his eyes frantically, begging his loyal knight to protect him. Everything is totally blurry from the flash, just fuzzy shapes. But as his eyesight slowly returns, the brutal reality sets in. His knight, bleeding heavily from the neck, chokes out a warning to run. An ambush. The man drops dead on the floor. Philip stares in absolute horror. Every single one of his elite knights is slaughtered. Nixon, the Black Lion, casually finishes off the last guy while the maids scream hysterically. Philip shrieks in terror. Meanwhile, our main character observes the blinding effects of the magic stone. I know what you are thinking, wiping out the marquee guards in literally seconds. Wild. That blinding stone is insanely rare, but clearly worth every penny. The squad leader marches up to him, confirming that all potential threats are permanently handled. They plan to escort the women out, plus this whining noble in charge. Lucian swallows hard, recalling his father's old lessons. He finally gets the heavy weight of true leadership now. Philip screeches at them to stay back. Does nobody know who he is? The fourth son of the mighty Logram family. He is shaking uncontrollably. The Black Lion calmly states, Archduke Valdec will decide his fate, so just surrender quietly. Philip grits his teeth, sweating bullets. Is that fake peasant actually a noble from the Valdec family? If so, getting captured here is a death sentence. He spins toward the terrified maids, screaming for them to move. He yells for the outside guards, but receives absolute silence. Are they all wiped out there too? Lucian thought it was all wrapped up, but Philip suddenly screams Felicia's name, and his whole vibe shifts entirely. Philip desperately tells her to pick up the sword, shouting that she can definitely fight. Felicia pushes the other maids aside, walks up, kicks the sword into the air, and catches it flawlessly. Unbelievable. Same face, similar name. The second she grabs that blade, her aura explodes. The sword demon, Felix. Is it her? Philip throws himself right at her feet, grabbing her dress like a coward, begging her to save his pathetic life. He promises to fix her mother's lowly status if she gets him out alive. So tell me, do you think this maid is about to completely snap? Stick with me, you are about to watch an absolutely insane standoff. He begs his silent bodyguard for protection. She just tells him to shut his mouth if he wants to survive. Pointing her blade straight at the enemies, she is completely over his total stupidity. Nixon calls this absolutely incredible. I mean, the guy is literally hiding behind a woman, zero pride left. Nixon respects her fighting spirit but tells her not to throw her life away on a total suicide mission just to look tough. This is the only mercy he shows women and kids. She stays dead silent, sealing her fate. In one lightning-fast lunge, he closes the gap, aiming his sword tip right at her face. One more inch, and she loses an eye completely. But for her, total slow motion. She tracks his breathing, deflects the heavy strike upwards, instantly shifts her footing, and launches a massive counterattack right back at him. The last thing he sees, his own shocked reflection. He barely had time to blink. Our main character is stunned. Her reaction speed is so crazy it basically looks like precognition. Watching those wild, sweeping sword movements, there is zero doubt left. This is the demon Felix. Felix's elegant manners never fit the gritty mercenary world anyway. With that slender build and those delicate features, it all makes sense now. The missing pieces finally fall into place. You and I are seeing the real Felicia, an illegitimate daughter hiding as a guy named Felix. Wiping blood off his cheek, the Black Lion admits it. If his block was even a split second slower, his head would be rolling. He severely underestimated her. He totally missed the hidden fangs on this kid. Swallowing his pride, he treats her as a real threat, erupting his massive aura. Felicia sweats. She knows this absolute master is leagues above her. Taking him head-on right now is basically impossible. Blind luck will not save her. Plus, there is another elite swordsman upstairs and a boss who surpasses them both. Zero chance of survival. But if this is her final strike, she will throw it with absolutely zero regrets. The Black Lion is genuinely amazed she is not hesitating in this completely hopeless trap. She tanks Nixon's murderous aura head-on. Meanwhile, Raymond spots something totally off. Blood drips from Nixon. They both dig in, exploding forward until their intense gazes and heavy blades collide. But suddenly, Lucian screams for them to stop. The distraction makes Nixon jump back and our main character declares this fight is over. No more pointless bloodshed today. Nixon is absolutely furious about this. He was promised total freedom here. Leaving her alive just creates a massive, deadly threat for House Valdec later. Lucian coldly asks if Nixon forgot who actually gave him authority. He totally gets the risk, but if they keep clashing, someone is ending up dead. Now here is where we get a crazy pivot. He steps up to Felicia, introduces himself as the boss, and offers to settle this with a high-stakes duel. If he loses, she walks away totally free. But if she loses, she drops the sword and fully surrenders to him. He smirks confidently. She is completely stunned by the offer. Meanwhile, Philip starts screaming at her to accept. He demands she agree instantly, crying that his personal safety is the only thing that matters. Does she not pity her own brother suffering through this total nightmare because of these absolute losers? Time to prove she is actually useful, unlike the rest of them. Prove she is nothing like her disgraced mother. Gripping her sword, she stays quiet until our guy finally tells Philip to shut up. A pathetic scumbag like him has zero right to disrespect them. He better stop trashing Felicia and the brave people who died protecting him. If he keeps yapping, he will literally rip his tongue out. Turning to the whole crew, he boldly declares full responsibility for whatever wild outcome happens next. Even if he somehow magically loses, he expects every single person to honor the deal. Facing Felicia again, he stakes his entire pride. The third son of House Valdec officially challenges her to a one-on-one duel. Time to draw her sword and fight for her life. Over on the sidelines, Nixon asks the commander if they are seriously just watching this unfold. Even holding back just to capture her, Nixon got completely countered. She did not just deflect his massive strike, she actually drew his blood. Her stance and messy mana control scream zero formal training, but the results say something entirely different. Her raw talent and killer instincts are unreal. Honestly, with her crazy skills, the young master stands zero chance. His courage is impressive, but trust me, you and I know actual combat is a whole different beast. A choice had to be made. Raymond completely agreed with his decision, but this time he just wanted to sit back and watch. When the third young master drew his sword, he revealed exactly what he felt during their clash. The swordswoman's mysterious talent and her sharp eyes, the third young master sees it all perfectly. He knows exactly what he brings to the table. Stick with me, let's see what he's actually trying to pull off. Meanwhile, Felicia realized something. Lucian Valdec was nothing like the arrogant nobles she usually dealt with. He didn't just disguise himself as a lowly servant to spy on the Logram forces. He was stepping into a totally pointless duel. She couldn't figure out his real endgame, but one thing was dead certain. He stood zero chance against her. Pushing her lips together, she promised to remember his mercy. Since he gave a mere servant like her a chance, if she won, she'd swallow her pride and quietly walk away from here. He declared that if he won, she was coming to Kelheim with him. Her mind was already made up. She confidently aimed her blade right at him, and he mirrored her stance. Not wanting to leave any nasty scars, she planned to knock him out in a single strike. Her eyes locked in, and she dashed forward. She leaped up and slashed, absolutely sure it was over. Then her eyes went wide in pure shock. He blocked it. He swung back, forcing her into a retreat. She was certain his breathing and reflexes were far too slow to match her lightning speed. Now watch closely, how on earth did he block that? In a flash, he was right in her face and she barely managed to block. He started pushing her back, figuring she was totally rattled by this sudden pressure. Fighting that Black Lion earlier had completely drained her mana control. Even if she held some power back, the massive gap in their strength right now was just too wide. But here is the catch. He knows her weaknesses, habits, and even her sword arcs better than she does. Their past showdown was super short, but that fierce clash taught them a ton about each other. If his body perfectly remembers the moves of one single person, it's her. Suddenly, a shattered blade piece launched into the sky, leaving everyone stunned and Philip terrified. Sure, their time together back then was pretty brief. Still, she gave everything to teach him swordplay, fully aware that one day they might actually end up as enemies. Thanks to those lessons, he survived. And now her shattered sword hit the ground hard. Felicia gasped for air, staring at him in complete shock. He figured this was a decent way to repay his old debt to her. By nightfall, the squad returned. Sigmund stood on his balcony, overlooking his lands, asking Raymond for updates. This boy Lucian, does he have what it takes to become the future pillar of the Valdec family? Raymond replied that the boy possessed an unbreakable core. The Archduke admitted he just wanted to hear the boy hadn't gone astray, but this update was completely unexpected. Raymond asked if his hunch was right. Sigmund smiled, noting he didn't send them on this mission for nothing. It's way too early to make calls about the throne's succession. Raymond bowed, apologizing for speaking out of turn, but Sigmund brushed it off. We both know if that report is real, it's absolutely insane. Smiling at the package in his hand, he firmly patted Raymond's shoulder. He joked that Raymond could at least play along. Plus, it had been ages since they drank, and he just brought out some top-tier wine. Care for a glass, it was his favorite kind. Chuckling, Raymond warned the Archduke he might end up regretting that offer tonight, because one single night wouldn't be enough to hear this entire crazy mission. With the Vestra mission done, our guy headed for Kelheim at dawn. Post-duel, Felicia completely blacked out from massive mana exhaustion. To help her heal up, he sent Felicia and the maids into town. He made that fake noble dig graves for his own vassals by hand, praying the idiot would finally grasp the massive weight of those lost lives. He closed his eyes, soaking in the sunny, peaceful breeze. But of course, Philip completely ruined the silence. He started screaming at Hugo, swearing he would never forgive him for this. Did he seriously think he'd survive this betrayal? Turning to Lucian, he actually demanded to be treated like a proper prisoner of war. How dare they treat a son of House Logram this way? Did he really want to declare an all-out war on their family? He just glared back with absolute disgust. Seeing this fool still didn't grasp the gravity of his situation, he dropped one final warning. And trust me on this, if he wants to survive another day, he better shut his mouth right now. Alright, stick with me here. We're entering a place where even his overpowered father wouldn't dare step. Welcome to the heart of Valdec Kelheim. The moment they finally roll into the city, the gates swing open to a completely unexpected sight. Massive crowds lining the streets, cheering him on for exposing House Logren's sick crimes and capturing their boss alive. Everyone's grinning from ear to ear. Hugo is totally baffled. What on earth is happening? Lucian just gives a low chuckle. Yeah, he wrote a letter asking to expose Logren's garbage behavior, but apparently his dad decided to go all out and back him completely. He glances at Hugo. Keep your head high, man. Just soak it in. This is his first real victory. While the crowd showers them with praise, Sigmund watches from above. Sigmund mutters that he must be getting soft in his old age, throwing a massive parade just because his kid asked for one. Edwin just smiles right back. Didn't the kid pull off a literally flawless, epic win? In his eyes, this wild celebration is absolutely earned. Plus, young Master Lucian's letter wasn't just some basic power grab. It was a total power move showing Valdec's iron resolve to the public, while sending a massive warning to the Imperial family and Logren. The Duke definitely saw that coming, hence the green light. Sigmund notes that the Empire has been weirdly tense lately. Now pay attention to this, even eternal suns fade and indestructible claws eventually break. To survive the incoming chaos, they need their blades sharper than ever. Back home, our main character crashes onto his bed, letting out a heavy sigh. Finally alive again. Crazy how fast he got used to the noble lifestyle. He actually missed this. The Duke wanted a private briefing tonight, so he actually has some downtime right now. Honestly, this whole mission paid off big time. He locked down Felicia way ahead of schedule, and that parade totally wiped out his trash reputation in one single hit. He gave Hugo a massive push to keep grinding, and even scored connections with the Black Lion. All these random puzzle pieces are finally snapping together perfectly on his journey. Every single move, dragging him closer to the dragon's throne. He grins, remembering his old mercenary crew. If his old buddies saw him right now, they would absolutely freak out. Time to prep his next move. While Felicia bounces back from her duel and Hugo grinds away, he figures he should see what he can milk from the Duke. He hits the dining hall where Sigmund is already waiting. While eating, he mentions his first run was a massive success. They cross-reference the intel and confirm it that kid they grabbed is 100% the Marquis' heir. The ultimate smoking gun. He seriously knocked it out of the park. He's thrilled, admitting he couldn't have done it without borrowing the Black Lion's muscle. So what exactly happens to Philip Logren now? The Marquis definitely won't just sit back and watch his kid bite the dust. The Archduke says they'll find out eventually. I know what you're thinking, but Bernhard Logren is pure venom. He'd sacrifice his own kid for the family instantly. He only needs one heir to keep the bloodline going. Hearing this, Lucian tenses up, but his dad tells him to chill out. He's done way more than enough already. Now it's time to name his price for pulling this off. That letter wasn't sent for nothing. The Duke seriously doubts his kid just wants a fancy parade and nothing else. Lucian chuckles, awkwardly looking away. Being put on the spot like that actually makes him a bit nervous. But hey, since the door is wide open, he's definitely going to shoot his shot. He figures he'll start by cashing in on Hugo, who completely carried his weight this run. But before he can even finish, his dad shuts it down. Absolutely impossible. Our main character stammers, saying he wasn't even done talking. His dad cuts in, "You want to knight him, right?" Sure, the guy helped out this time, but his old ties to the Marquis are a huge red flag. If he wasn't lured away, he would have stayed loyal. Lucian pushes back, calling that pure guesswork. Bottom line, he fought for them and completely proved his worth. His dad shoots him a deadly glare. Drop it right now. A true knight builds his own rep with undeniable epic feats. Does he seriously think this guy has what it takes? Lucian deflates. He fully expected pushback, but this feels like an absolute dead end. His old man tells him, point blank, need cash, take chests of gold, need a new identity, done. But a knighthood, not happening, at least not today. Lucian sends a mental apology to Hugo. They're going to have to wait. So where does this leave us? He backs off, agreeing with his dad. He definitely jumped the gun. All right, stick with me here. Sigmund told him to ask for something else, nothing too crazy this time. The MC just grinned. He had one very modest request. Let Felicia meet the Holy Swordsman. His father, completely blindsided by this absolute curveball. Fast forward to a prison camp. Felicia sat in her room, realizing this was no ordinary cell. It was a VIP lockup for nobles. She came as a servant, yet they were feeding and treating her. What was their endgame? Thinking about her brutal past, she figured maybe this was actually for the best. At least she escaped that absolute hellhole. Then, her mind drifted back to her duel with Lucian. If only she could hold a sword just once more before dying. Honestly, she wanted a rematch with him more than anything. Though obviously that was just an impossible pipe dream. Suddenly the MC walked in. The healer said her mana control was a mess, leaving her severely exhausted. He casually asked how she felt. Could she hold a sword again? She completely froze at his sudden arrival. But honestly, all she cared about was the mention of a sword. He asked if she was staying forever. Weirdly enough, she actually liked prison life. He grabbed some bread, took a bite, and sighed. He didn't work this hard, bringing her here for nothing. He cut right to the chase. Didn't she want to finally unleash her true sword talent? He wasn't going to let her stay some basic fighter. He planned to recommend her as the Holy Swordsman Eisen's apprentice. You're gonna want to see this, she hissed, asking if he was mocking her. She snapped back. A lowly servant girl becoming a swordswoman, ridiculous. An apprentice to the Holy Swordsman, completely and utterly absurd. She might be lowborn, but she knew her place. Lucian quickly realized he came on way too strong. Her reaction made perfect sense. As the Marquis's illegitimate kid, she was forbidden from even touching a blade, let alone actually training with one. Instead, she just faced endless bullying and bitter jealousy from her own half-siblings. That trauma created the sword demon Felix, who eventually fled the Logram estate. He completely understood her distrust, telling her to really think it over before deciding. Confused, she asked what the heck he meant. He simply meant he was giving her total freedom to choose. Walking toward the door, he added, she could leave today. So he just left her with one final piece of advice, never abandon the sword. She was only truly herself with a blade in hand. That hit her right in the soul, since her own family denied her that. Heart-pounding, she jumped out of bed and yelled, asking if she seriously had the right to do this. Could she really throw everything else away, just for the sword he swore on his very name that if she wanted it, she could? We both know this trope. Back in his mercenary days, he asked Felix about his real dream. Others chased luxury and fame, but for him, completely different vibe. Becoming a top-tier knight was never the issue. A knight captain gig, or maybe scoring a fancy noble title. He never really cared about that stuff. If he had one single wish, it was to toss everything aside and devote himself entirely to the sword. That was all he ever needed. Later, our MC escorted her to the training grounds, spotting his waiting father. Walking up, he looked totally confused and asked why he was there. His dad replied that this was a meeting with the Holy Sword. Did he seriously think he'd missed something this massive? He glanced at the recruits, and they instantly dropped into a deep, respectful bow. Sigmund crossed his arms. So, this guy is Hugo. Hugo looked up, totally sweating it. Sigmund admitted he did well recently, but his past crimes were way too huge to just sweep under the rug for one victory. Hugo instantly bowed his head in heavy guilt, admitting there was absolutely zero excuse for what he did. Sigmund then dropped a bomb. Despite knowing all that, his young lord actually requested a knighthood for him, and to make it happen, he completely gave up his own reward. Lucian panicked, asking what he meant. Hugo was stunned. Did the MC really ask for this, just for him? He actually kept his insane promise. The Archduke hated disappointing him but flat out rejected the request. He didn't think Hugo was ready for that heavy burden yet. Instead, he told him to keep grinding, prove his loyalty through actual deeds, and one day, the Archduke himself would officially grant the title. He'd be waiting for that day. Fired up, Hugo confidently swore he would absolutely crush those expectations. Then Sigmund shifted his intense gaze to Felicia. Growing up in that environment, she should understand how this brutal world works. Trust me, we know the stakes. The heir wasn't decided, and Lucian took a massive risk backing a servant girl. If she couldn't prove her absolute worth, game over. Stick with me here, everyone thought our boy was just a fool, blinded by a pretty face. So he asks her straight up, is she actually worth all this risk? She just mumbled, totally lost for words. But our main character, he stood right up for her. Flashing a cocky smile, he tells his dad she is absolutely worth it. Let the haters doubt him now and call him totally crazy. Even Felicia herself was doubting her own worth, but that changes right today. Soon they would all see she is a hidden gem held back by her status. He leans in and whispers, why so frozen? He just needed her to say she was ready. Her excited answer, proof he made the right call. The Grand Duke wasn't waiting around for nothing. He wanted a front row seat to judge his son's new vassals. Like a dad checking if his kid's wings actually work, he showed up right here in the flesh. The Archduke declares that since he is so confident, it is testing time. He points to the training ground, time to face the holy sword. Lucian just bowed respectfully, fully thanking his old man. Then Eisen rolls up, stroking his beard like a boss, noticing both the third young master and his lordship arrived. Now watch closely. Sigmund claims this is a huge family event, and his knightly curiosity is totally maxed out. He told him to judge her brutally, 0 free passes just because she is his son's pick. The main character agreed. Otherwise, this whole little deal of theirs means nothing. Eisen remembered exactly what he promised. He turns to the super nervous girl and declares that since they both insist, this trial gets deadly serious. He steps up to her, and her heart is absolutely hammering. Right there in front of her, a holy sword. Just standing near it, she could feel the whole room's vibe totally shift. She stammers out that it's a huge honor. She tried to properly introduce herself, but he instantly cut her off. Names don't matter. He slams the wooden sword into the ground with pure aura, saying her blade needs to do the talking first. Just pull the wooden sword out. Simple right, Lucian knew it was on. He focused intense mana into the tip and casually drove it 1/2 meter deep into the solid floor. Raw physical strength wouldn't budge it. She had to use mana to pull it off, but there was a hidden catch. Meanwhile, she grabs the hilt, sweating bullets knowing there are no do-overs. She has to perfectly copy Philip's exact moves. Just focus mana right into her hands and she's got this. She actually pulls it out on the very first try. No sweat at all. She is absolutely over the moon. Smiling brightly, she asks the grim swordsman what the next step is. But he glares at her flatly, stating that's enough. They are totally done. Totally shocked, she asks what he is even talking about. You and I thought she passed right. Well, he grabs her wrist and says she clearly doesn't get it, even though she literally just did what he asked. Her internal mana channels, an absolute mess. She had been skipping proper circulation because it hurt. Her wild mana control was completely wrecking her body's natural limits. It is classic arrogant behavior relying way too much on raw, unpolished talent. Sure, as a woman clashing swords with a black lion, she obviously has potential. But sadly, raw talent doesn't magically fix huge character flaws. Does that reality check satisfy her? She better remember her teacher's words and rethink her attitude. Step 1. She desperately needs to learn how to take actual advice. She admits she never had a real master. Honestly, she has absolutely zero clue what he is even talking about. What the heck is circulation mana control? She only watched her brother from far away and just copied him. Being completely clueless about the basics, she practically begs the old man to teach her. He is totally floored. Is she seriously saying she learned all that crazy stuff just by watching? Absolutely impossible. After all, she used pure mana to yank that sword out. She explains she just memorized her brother's sparring technique. Every time her brother's aura spiked, she literally felt his blade get heavier and way faster. Just off pure instinct. Eisen's jaw practically drops. What kind of insane nonsense is this girl spouting? You literally cannot see internal mana flows with the naked eye. Even he needs direct physical contact to do that. Feeling someone else's mana is basically like having a sixth sense. How on earth did she copy that through sheer willpower? He shoots Lucian a wild look. Who is this girl? Lucian smirks. Trust me, you'll love this. He promised a legendary talent, the literal peak of swordsmanship, and he delivered. Let's jump right in. He wanted to test her real combat skills. He stood perfectly still while she circled him fast, hunting for that one perfect opening. Suddenly, she lunged. She blurred right behind him and swung hard, but her blade just slammed straight into his block. He coldly pointed out her wasted movements. To him, her blade felt dull, and her willpower seemed even weaker than her steel. Was this really all her desperation could manage? Gritting her teeth, she backed off, her confidence shattered. She felt completely frozen, realizing her attacks were completely useless against him. And the craziest part, this legendary holy swordsman hadn't even taken a single step. This was absolute peak swordsmanship, a massive, unbridgeable gap in power that she could not even begin to understand. But there was no way she was quitting. Pulling herself together, she slashed a massive chunk of stone right out of the floor, kicked it upward, and charged straight at him. Tapping the flying stone with her blade to boost her speed, she launched forward. Aizen watched her fierce fighting spirit burning bright against an impossible wall. Pure creative freedom, untamed by combat experience. Yet, it still wasn't enough. She had to unleash every ounce of that buried anger. With a casual wave, he sliced the stone slab completely in half, exposing Felicia right behind it. Now watch closely. She charged the swordsman, but it felt like rushing a terrifying monster, making her whole body tremble. Pushing past his crushing pressure, she screamed, gathering all her power into one final swing. Seeing this, the old man actually cracked a faint smile. A massive, blinding flash of light erupted across the arena from her strike. Watching from the sidelines, Sigmund asked his son what makes a swordsman truly reliable. It is the one who understands pure hardship. Someone who grinds their basics through endless repetition, forging themselves in brutal battles where one tiny hesitation literally means death. It sounds incredibly cruel, but that is the foundation of true sword skill. He always surrounded himself with hardworking veterans. But sometimes, literal geniuses appear people who effortlessly jump over walls that others spend whole lifetimes building. These rare talents hit the world like a blazing sun, like a massive wave that just completely swallows everything in its path. Absolute awe-inspiring talent. Just like this incredible girl. You know how wild this is? Aizen actually had to catch her blade barehanded. Sigmund agreed he made the right choice. His son pointed out that if they had ignored her potential and denied her this chance, that brilliant spark would have faded into nothing. So many hidden talents just vanish because nobody gives them an opening. Aizen, though, stared deeply into her unwavering eyes, completely locked onto her sword. She was born with the absolute destiny to wield a blade no matter what insane trials tried to block her path. Her eyes could literally see the truth. Breaking all common sense, her path of the sword stretched outward into infinity. He calmly asked her to state her name once more. She proved her worth today, and from now on, absolutely nobody would dare question her. He told her to claim it with pride. Shocked, she lowered her heavy weapon and quietly confessed that her name was just Felicia. Her mother never had a surname. And her father, the powerful head of the Logren clan, strictly refused to let her use his name. So, Felicia was all she had. He gently noted how she had survived all that trauma with incredible mental strength. Right then, he officially named her Felicia Brightener. From this day forward, she is his adopted daughter, and he promised to teach her everything from elite swordplay to proper high society manners. But it wouldn't be easy. There are no shortcuts here. Could she handle the pressure? Overwhelmed by this massive honor, she dropped to her knees, crying pure tears of absolute joy. He warmly patted her back, admitting he was just a stubborn old man who judged her way too fast and said some really harsh things. Someday, his strict old-school views will definitely clash with her wild free spirit. When that inevitable day arrives, can she change his mind with her blade? And in return, he will try to understand his own true feelings through her sword. Their past paths were totally different, but now their blades point exactly the same way. Makes you feel good, right? From this day on, they move forward together.